also the principal investigator of the National Capital Consortium for Pediatric Device Innovation, NCCPDI, together with Dr. Bill Bentley and Dr. Anthony Sandler. This competition is funded by an FDA grant that helped us establish NCCPDI, and it's in collaboration with the MedTech Innovator, our accelerator partner. This year's competition focuses on innovations in pediatric devices that treat congenital heart disease with an emphasis on electrophysiology devices. Congenital heart disease affects 6 out of 1,000 babies born in the US each year and is often complicated by arrhythmias. While the last decade brought great advances in technologies that improve the care of adult arrhythmias, pediatric patients have been left behind, with only 5 devices approved for use in children in the same period. So I look forward to all the presentations today, and also to our good friend and accelerator graduate Ken Nelson's talk during the halftime. With that, I would like to introduce Dr. Bill Bentley from University of Maryland for his introduction.
Greetings, everybody. I'm not going to take much time here. I just wanted to say welcome as well. In case you don't know it, we're part of the Fischel Institute of Biomedical Devices, and we're co-PIs with Children's and with MedTech Innovator on the NCCPDI. And in case you don't know it, the Fischel Institute can design something, can build something, can help get something through the FDA. And our services extend beyond NCCPDI. We're therefore primarily folks in Maryland, but we'll work with anybody. And just wanted to wrap my hands around this outstanding competition today and just welcome everybody. If you need any information about our institute, Fischel Institute, umd.edu. With that, I'd like to turn this over to Paul Grand, the CEO of MedTech Innovator. And thanks to MedTech Innovator for hosting the entire event, at the IT component, and making sure that we all keep our ducks in a row. So thanks. Paul?
Hey, thank you very much, Bill. And thank you, Kalala. It's fantastic to be here again for another year of a pediatric pitch competition. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Paul Grand. I'm the CEO at MedTech Innovator, and MedTech Innovator is an accelerator. But we're a little different than most accelerators. We're focused on finding the best companies in the world in terms of startups and emerging companies, and giving them a network and the resources they need to be successful. So we're not asking you to relocate or move to California where we're based, although it is a nice place to be. We're looking for you to be successful, and we want to bring the world's best ecosystem to you wherever you are. And in this particular case, we're focused on pediatrics. And as Kalala and Bill both said, you know, this is a category that is extremely important. And we're focused in a particular category within pediatrics this time that is incredibly important. So when we're looking at companies, what we always try and do is find companies that really have a chance, we believe, of really making an impact on the market, on helping patients. And we want to do everything we can to remove barriers. So that might be introductions to people who can help you on the regulatory side, on the market access side, on your design, whatever it might be. We want to make sure that you don't make mistakes along the way. That's really what this is all about. So today we are going to be evaluating companies in a typical pitch competition style format. You're going to present if you're one of our presenting companies, and then we have judges who are going to answer, who are going to ask you questions, but who are also there in general to provide some feedback to you. So for example, you may have a situation where someone thinks there's something different that you could do with your technology, or something that you might not have thought about, and hopefully they're going to share that with you today. So it's not just to have you pitch, but it's also to give you feedback as well about what it is that you're developing. So think of us that way, that we're trying to help, and that we're not just evaluating you today to decide if you're going to be the winner of this competition. We're not going to pick any winners per se today. What we're going to pick today are the companies that are going to move on to be part of our pediatric accelerator program. And to really give you a little bit of context for that, the important thing is that on a global basis, you are going to be part of a larger cohort. So we'll have a small number of companies that are part of this pediatric accelerator, but we'll have a larger cohort. In total, in our US program, we're going to have an additional 50 companies. And then in our Asia Pacific program, we're going to have 20 to 25 companies. And we have a new BioTools Innovator program that will have another 10 companies. So when we're all done, it'll be close to 100 companies that will be participating in the various MedTech Innovator programs this year. You'll be part of that overall cohort if we select you to advance to our pediatric accelerator. So that's the important thing for you to keep in context is there's a lot in the line. It's not just about winning a prize today. It's about being part of a global pool of innovators who are all trying to do the same thing, which is bring products to market. And again, that's what we're here to help you do. So think of us that way. Don't be too nervous about presenting. This is an opportunity, again, to not only impress people with what you're doing, but really talk about the impact on patients. So I urge you to focus on a couple things. Number one, what's going to be the impact on patients today? That's very important. We want to understand the clinical impact of what it is that you're doing. We also want to understand the business model. That's very important. So make sure you emphasize that, even if it's not in your primary slide deck, make sure you talk about the business model. We want to understand how your product is going to be paid for. So that's very important. And then ultimately understanding, your plan for accessing the market, another thing that's very important to talk about. So we'll get into this as we go. We're going to ask you a lot of questions. In between each presentation, our judges will ask questions. I urge you to keep your presentations as short as possible. We've allocated for each company, there's a total slot of 15 minutes for each of these. But the longer you go in your presentation, the less time we have for Q&A. So please keep your presentations short so we have ample time for Q&A. Put a phone down, watch the time, keep your presentations as tight as possible because we have judges here who want to ask you questions. And ultimately, if we just wanted to read your presentation, we could have done that. That's why we want to be able to ask you questions. So make sure you give us lots of time to do that. Very important. Now, we have a number of judges who are participating today who you'll be meeting. As our judges are asking questions, they can introduce themselves as they go. So the first-time judges, as you ask a question, please introduce yourself. Say who you are, where you're from, and then ask your question. Also, for our judges, we have a judging form, which was sent to you in advance. It's also in the chat. There's a link to the judging form. Each of you has a unique login, which I know you were provided in advance, that will let you log into the judging form to provide your username and password. And then for each of the companies, you'll be able to fill out the form and give your evaluation. The questions that we're going to be asking you are pretty straightforward, but for the most part, the important thing is there is one field that allows for feedback. We really want to make sure that you provide feedback in that field because that gives our information that we can then pass along to the company. So they're going to hear your questions right now, but the feedback later is really important. It will be anonymous, so it won't say which judge gave which piece of feedback, but for all of you to know, this is really important that leaving today's event, regardless of what happens, you're going to get feedback in a written format as well with hopefully constructive criticism. Some things might be positive, like, fantastic opportunity or great team or, great technology or this is really needed. And other things might be constructive. We might say, hey, your presentation was a little confusing. I didn't really understand how you're going to gain access in the market, or the pricing doesn't seem to make sense, or whatever it might be. Judges, just please fill in some information in an anonymous feedback form. The rest of it should be pretty straightforward. The other resource I'll mention is our bio book. So if you look in the chat, again, at the bottom of the screen, if you click the chat button, there's a link for the bio book. The bio book is fantastic as a resource because it provides a list of all of the people who are judging today, a list of all the people who are presenting today. Very important there, in addition to the biographies and the photos of the people presenting and the judges, there's also links to people's LinkedIn, if we have those, as well as their email address. So you can use this opportunity to follow up with the people who are here evaluating you today, if you're one of our presenting companies, whether it's a strategic or an investor or somebody else. Also, you have the ability to email each other. So again, remember, we selected you out of a larger pool of applicants because we thought you were the most compelling companies that we could be evaluating today. And you should all help each other. These are people that you should contact the other startups and see how can you guys help each other as peers. Whether or not we select you, there should be a ton of value for you today. So the way this is going to work is that we're going to have companies present one after another. We're going to take a short break midway through and have a keynote by Ken Nelson, who is an alumni of both MedTech Innovator and this pediatric program. So I'm really looking forward to that. And as I said, we'll go through each of the pitches, and then at the end of it, the judges will stick around to have some discussion about all of the companies. So that's how this is going to work. Each company, as I said, is going to have 15 minutes to do its total period of time. Keep your presentation short, 5 minutes or so tops, so that we have at least 10 minutes for Q&A. So again, that's how that's going to work. We have a couple other members here from our team that I'll quickly introduce, and then we're going to go ahead and get into our pitches. So let me make a couple introductions. First, from MedTech Innovator, I'm going to introduce our COO, Catherine Zavala. So Catherine.
Hi, everybody. Good luck with the pitches today.
Catherine, so you'll get a chance to meet with and work with all the people I'm introducing you to if you're selected to advance in our program, which, by the way, is a 4-month program. Completely virtual. You don't have to move anywhere or travel, although there would be some optional travel at the end, potentially in September. All right, so the other members of my team I want to introduce quickly. So we have Brian Benson. Brian, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the pediatric pitch event. And yeah, excited to see everybody and really learn more about your technologies and potentially help you through our accelerator program.
Thank you, Brian. Now, Brian also started and ran a pediatric accelerator here in Los Angeles for a while. So he's another great resource to have in addition to being a great resource in general. Let me introduce Ali Zimnak, who's here. Ali from our team.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I am our Marketing and Events Associate alongside Jerry. I'm excited to be here and see all the pitches today.
Thank you, Ali. Jerry Cialina.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jerry. I am the one who's been emailing you about today's event. I'm currently messaging a couple of you to get you situated with Kobo and judging. But if you have any issues today with the event, feel free to reach out to myself or Ali, and we can help you get sorted out. Thank you and have fun today.
Thank you, Jerry. And Eugene.
Hi, everyone. I'm Eugene. I'm a fellow at MedTech Innovator, helping out with due diligence. Nice to meet you all and excited to hear from your pitches.
Fantastic. All right. So this is how we're going to be doing it today. As I mentioned again, you'll have your presentations. If I see somebody going too long, I will probably speak up and interrupt you, but we really do want you to finish your presentation. So we try not to stop your presentation, but please, as I said, put down a phone, start a timer, keep an eye on it. If you're going over 5 minutes, you have to wrap up. So we will urge you to stop if I see you getting to 7 minutes, I'm definitely going to interrupt. So just be aware of that. All right, so let's go ahead and have our first presentation. So this is going to be a Trility Medical. So if you just want to go ahead and share your slides, we'd love to hear the story.
There we go, unmuted. Just to confirm that you can both see and hear. Is that correct?
We can, Nick. It looks great.
Perfect. Well, Paul, thanks for the introduction here. My name is Nick Von Bergen. I'm a pediatric cardiac electrophysiologist. Also, I happen to be the CMO and co-founder of Trility Medical. And I'm reasonably excited to be able to present at this pitch in particular because of the reason we invented the AtriAmp. We actually invented the AtriAmp to improve the diagnosis of arrhythmias in pediatric patients with congenital heart disease. So let's dive into this a little bit. So as a pediatric cardiac electrophysiologist, a common experience and what I consider the clinical need for me is the challenge in evaluating the heart rhythms after heart surgery. So for example, I was in the ICU earlier this morning. I have some patients that are immediately after major open heart surgeries. And if they have a gradual increasing heart rate, I might look up at the bedside monitor and have an EKG kind of like this. And even as a trained electrophysiologist, I cannot tell you if this is an abnormal rhythm or a normal rhythm because of the inadequate size of the signals on the top chamber of the heart, the atrial signals. So the challenge is that bedside monitors are inadequate for rhythm identification in these critical patients. Over 20,000 patients per year, pediatric patients per year, have heart surgery. So the trick is, when we have this question, we know what to do. There's actually American Heart Association practice standards that say, here's what you do. What you're supposed to do is take advantage of atrial epicardial pacemaker leads, or to define that a little bit more, wires are placed on the outside of the atrium of the heart after heart surgery. These wires can then be ported over to a typical 12-lead EKG, and that 12-lead EKG can give you a higher quality, the most accurate diagnosis. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Here's the electrogram that we just saw just a bit ago, and I have no idea what the atrial signals are doing. Here is now the atrial electrogram by using these wires ported over to the 12-lead EKG. In this case, it was actually to the atrium, and this is the atrial signal here. So from across the room, I can now see what this rhythm is, and it tells me whether or not the patient's in an abnormal heart rhythm. If we look back at the practice standards actually say this technique can be especially useful for diagnosing arrhythmias in children, but we don't do it. And we don't do it that often, I should say, because of the challenges associated with the current infrastructure. Right now, if we want to do this, I've got to adapt to 12-lead EKG. I've got to wait for my EKG technician in my most critical patients, and then they give me a 10-second snapshot. It's not in real time. It's not continuous. It's not ideal. So I griped about this for a little while before I invented, with my co-team with Trinity Medical, the AtriAmp. So here's the AtriAmp. It's a device right here, and I'll show you a little bit more in just a bit, but it allows us to take the signals from the atrial epicardial wires and port them over to the bedside monitor. And now this is a little bit of a funny video. You can see these hands in the background. These are actually my hands. But what I did is I put this in here because this is a video from my phone of a real example in a pediatric congenital heart patient of use of the AtriAmp. And I want to show you what it does. So the top signal here, its top electrogram, is what we have for a basic, a typical EKG on the bedside monitor. Tiny little atrial signals. And you can see them nicely here, but oftentimes you can't. Down here, here's the AtriAmp. These huge guys right here that are right by the ventricular signals, these are the atrial signals. This is the heart of rhythm analysis, knowing what the atrium's doing, knowing what the ventricle's doing, and knowing the relationship between the two. So we now have the gold standard for monitoring available on the bedside. At the same time, when we developed the AtriAmp, we did not want to sacrifice safety, so we've allowed this to connect also to a temporary pacemaker with an additional cable. Lastly, it is also provided sterile and a double package, so we can actually place this in the OR itself. So let me show you just a quick video here, right there, just to show how we do it. So you adapt the precordial lead, you take the precordial lead, you hook it up to the AtriAmp, it has a little snap electrode here. We now are displaying continuously in real time the highest quality signal with the atrial electrogram as recommended by the American Heart Association. We do this with the surface electrogram to avoid interpretation errors. To set this up, what you do is you place the epicardial wire in the negative port, and then another one in the positive port, and then you use the clip electrode, and we are now displaying. Very easy setup. And then once again, if you need to connect to a temporary pacemaker, separately provided cable, and you just hook it together like this. So that very quick demonstration was how easy it is to now have the highest quality signals continuously in real time. So let's jump into what do we do now and what is optimal and how does the AtriAmp help? So right now, if we say, what is the highest quality signal? The highest quality signal recommended by the AHA is using an adapted atrial electrogram. Right now, we have to adapt a 12-lead EKG, but that's not continuous. It's not in real time. It doesn't have any of the advantages of the bedside monitor. The bedside monitor advantages include being continuous real time, allowing me to look at it after the event has happened. And so the AtriAmp combines the beauty of those two things together to give us continuous real-time monitoring on the bedside monitor with all those advantages. At the same time, we allow an atrial pacing connection if we need it, to allow us to have atrial pacing for either tachycardia indications or bradycardic indications. Lastly, and I'll jump into this just a little bit more, is the device expected to both save money and also generate revenue. And so how does it do this? This is very unique to the AtriAmp. And this is one of the things we're trying to figure out just a little bit more for the typical reimbursement strategy in case we have questions afterwards. But you can actually bill for procedures called intra-atrial recording, similar to an electrophysiology study, which with one interpretation for 1 day is expected to more than pay for the device itself. In addition, we're decreasing the amount of unreimbursed costs, and in the future, the device actually may be reimbursed by Medicare or Medicaid. So I am very comfortable stating this based on our experience using the AtriAmp in my patients at the University of Wisconsin. The AtriAmp is improving the care of my most critical patients. And I do believe that it will move to be the standard of care, definitively for pediatrics and probably for everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so judges, we've got 10 minutes for questions, or about actually more like 8 minutes for questions. So let's go ahead, judges, and start with questions. So you can just unmute yourselves and ask questions away.
Yeah, so this is Susan Albert. I'm a PEDS ID doc by training. I'm an FDA alum and an alum from several medical device companies, and now I consult. So that's my introduction. I have a question. The slides say that the product is already has already been seen by FDA for adults. What was the modification for PEDS?
So it's actually, we have a 510K approval for pediatric and adult patients. So we had to prove similar capabilities to two different things. One is the connections towards the temporary pacemaker, and the other one is the connections towards the bedside monitor. So essentially cable connections, and then prove that the interplay between the three of those did not cause things like leakage current and other issues that could cause any three of those systems, patient, temporary pacemaker, or monitor, to mess up. And so by doing that, we were able to get approval through the FDA through that regulatory.
So you have a 510K. What are you looking for now?
So right now we have started, we are using it at one institution right now, and we are starting to develop sales beyond. And so we are really in the understanding reimbursement strategy a bit more, and then getting out sales. Initially, we're approaching pediatric centers. So I've actually written my pediatric electrophysiology colleagues, and there's been a great response in terms of interest, because people felt the same points that I did as a practicing electrophysiologist. We have not made any connections towards the adult world, but that's also not my passion. And as an electrophysiologist, I'm going to leave that to my business. PEDS electrophysiologist, I'll leave that to my business side. But we are very much in the developing relationships with things like distributors, marketing, and getting the device out there. Eventually, we will also start to do adaptions from this to improve the device itself. For example, this feeds very well for things like machine learning for a higher caliber signal that can eventually improve automatic computer rhythm analysis, that could eventually even improve rhythm analysis without the AtriAmp. So there's avenues of directions that we could go depending on the after the laser focus of the sales of the AtriAmp itself.
Thank you.
Hi, Nick. That was a great presentation. I'm Rosemary Truman, the founder and CEO of the Center for Advancing Innovation, and also Ignite Social Impact. Ignite is a crowd equity platform. I just wanted to, again, lovely presentation. Good job on that. I wanted to get an understanding about your go-to-market plan and also your manufacturing plan.
Yep. So the go-to-market plan very much is starting in where we consider the high yield space. The high yield space is the pediatric centers, and so we've been reaching out to large academic pediatric centers. I know somebody at most of those centers, because there's only about 200 pediatric cardiac electrophysiologists nationwide. So I know many of them. So the main one is through personal point of contact is how we're trying to get the devices into people's hands. If we look at that slightly broader, how are we actually going to support the sales? We're developing relationships with distributors. So we're under contract negotiations with a few people, have not had any things set up, but hopefully within the next few weeks or so, we'll have at least 2. We'll be searching out additional distributors in the future. Would be the main thing in terms of our sales moving into the market. And then once we get centered in the pediatric space, we're hoping that that will allow us to move out into the adult space. You had mentioned, was it reimbursement also?
No, I asked about manufacturing.
Oh, manufacturing. Thank you. So manufacturing, we are very local. So I'm at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and we actually manufacture at a place called Accessor, which is here in Wisconsin as well. And so our manufacturing is pretty much of everything is extremely local. So we have it done with a contract manufacturer.
Thank you.
Doctor, this is Gordon Schatz. Very exciting technology. I am involved with developing and implementing reimbursement strategies for a variety of devices. And I had about 3 questions. And number one, a comment. It's great that at this stage in your product development, you're thinking about reimbursement and you have some answers to the key questions. Are there codes? What does the payment look like? I actually wanted to stick with one issue of the 3 codes, coverage and payment. Are there any coverage policies that apply for the adult use that might help or create a barrier in pediatric use, particularly if the adult policies are Medicare for senior citizens, but I would imagine your patient population is going to be Medicaid or private payer. So first question is, adult policies helpful or not?
So I will answer this to the best of my ability, and I hope I hit the nail close enough to the head here. So the ability to use the device it can be used in both pediatric and adult centers. So my understanding that the eventual reimbursement pathway will be, number one, so the hospital will pay for the device itself out of the hospital, PICU or intensive care funds. There's a different reimbursement path that can allow reimbursement if they then use the device itself for a procedure code. So that will not necessarily be a direct reimbursement for the cost of the device, but is expected to be more than reimbursing the cost that the device was paid for. So let's pretend the device, we have a list price of $699 right now. If I would bill intra-atrial recording at the University of Wisconsin, the reimbursement, or I should say, the charge is about $1,000, $1,000 that we would potentially be reimbursed from insurance company. So that would be for one day, and if the atrial epicardial wires and in multiple days, you could actually be reimbursed well more than the cost of the device itself. In the future, what we hope to do is that if we can prove, and we are actually doing this with some research, we've had improvements in accuracy and confidence with reading the AtriAmp, but if we can prove that there is a substantial benefit, we're hoping that we can get a HCPCS code and eventually apply for reimbursement through the insurance company itself for the cost of the device. So those are the routes that we hope to do that, but I don't see any particular differences between the pediatric space and the adult space, because I think it's the same route. That may be due to lack of knowledge, but that's my understanding.
Right. A quick follow-up. Is this going to be used for doctors like yourself when the patient's in the hospital? Could it be used when the patient's discharged and you're doing the tests in your office?
Good question. So it requires those wires to be placed on the heart. So it is typically for the first 3 to 5 days, perhaps, after open heart surgery only. So our total market is about 430 to 450,000 patients that undergo open heart surgery per year. Of that, 300,000 are adults, and then $100,000 get in, I should say, cabbages. 100,000 or so is the other adults with bigger surgeries, and then about 22 to 27,000 pediatric patients that undergo cardiac surgery per year. So it is really open heart surgery with atrial epicardial wires. And once those wires are out, the device cannot be used.
Right. So inpatient, only inpatient.
Inpatient, ICU only.
Right.
In general.
Right.
Last question. One last
This is
question.
Charles Bridges. I'd like to ask a question. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, hey, great. So I'm Charles Bridges. I'm a cardiac surgeon by training. Did part of my training at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia with Bill Norwood, somebody I'm sure you know.
Of course.
And I'm now the Chief Technology Officer for the cardiovascular division of Janssen Pharmaceuticals. So a couple questions. Enjoyed the presentation. I guess one of the questions I have is the pediatric device different from the adult device?
It is not.
So it's the same device.
Exact same device. We've used it now.
Approval for it in the pediatric population.
Correct. So it is the exact same device. We've used it a few times on my adult side here at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Actually, in post-transplants was the one that they picked, and then they're evaluating it for use on their routine post-operative patients. It's been really good with atrial fibrillation in a pig model.
Yeah. So, I mean, the real question I have, having put those pacing wires on thousands of patients myself, is how often, where's the value creation, right? I mean, it's nice to have, right? It's nice to be able to say, 90% of the time, you're actually going to know what the rhythm is, because it's either sinus rhythm or it doesn't matter. It's only a small percentage of the time that you really need to know, well, is it atrial flutter or is it atrial fibrillation, et cetera? And then my question is, rather than focusing on reimbursement, can you show how you're going to create value? Right? I mean, can you show an example of a patient whose life you're going to save, or, some way that as a healthcare administrator, I want to invest in this, reimbursement notwithstanding, because I think it's going to improve outcomes in a measurable way.
Yeah, that is surprisingly easier than you might think, though probably beyond the scope of the time that we have. But just a very brief example. We were using it in our ICU for research initially. Afterwards, the PICU docs started being like, oh my gosh, this is exceedingly nice, and asking for it outside of the research study. Then we started putting it on patients that were outside the research study. And occasionally when we would hook it up, we would find that they were in a different rhythm than we expected because of inadequate quality of rhythm to start, quality of information to diagnose the rhythm to start. So now the PICU docs have been saying, hey, we want this, as opposed to be me driven and or research driven. I'm actually been exceedingly hypersensitive to not making recommendations for use because of my conflict of interest. So when you add in added accuracy, added confidence, and especially acute patients, it becomes very easy once people have used it a little bit to find the value associated with it. Acknowledging that now, if we switch to the adult space has a little bit more tendency to have your opinion, to say, but we do well enough right now. And I would say, I think if first you select the higher risk patients and then you get used to it. And I think that would be how it should work in the adult space. And then once you realize that this is actually better and you're missing things, then it'll trickle down to the every patient. I think the logical extension of optimal care is to use something like this, as long as it's not a financial hindrance to the institution on everybody. This is where it's going to go. But that said, I think there'll be a little bit of adjustment to the standard of practice as people get used to this and realize how good this is, and they're actually providing better care. I think we have to have better care as an active process, and this would be an active movement towards what is the American Heart Association standard for rhythm monitoring. So,
no, very good.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that presentation, Nick. Let's move on then to our next presentation. So this is going to be Children's Hospital at Montefiore. Bradley, if you want to go ahead and share your screen and tell us the story.
Yes. Can everybody confirm you can see and hear me?
We can indeed.
Great. So my name is Bradley Clark. I'm the Chief Medical Officer and co-founder of PeriCore LLC. I'm also the Director of Pediatric Electrophysiology at the Children's Hospital at Montefiore in the Bronx, New York. And today I'm going to be presenting our device, PeriTorque. So each year we have thousands of infants and children that require invasive procedures due to abnormal cardiac rhythms. Electrophysiology, or EP studies, and ablation procedures provide diagnostic information and also a potential for a patient cure. In the US, there's more than 5,000 pediatric ablation procedures performed annually, with more than 500,000 performed in the US in adults as well. Catheters are inserted into the veins in both legs and advance inside the heart. The catheter is then manipulated manually by the electrophysiologist from outside the body. This requires a lot of manual force, a lot of frequent pinching and twisting, and each study typically utilizes anywhere from 3 to 5 catheters. Then therapy is delivered from the catheter tip in order to destroy tissue to provide that cure. There are definitely complications associated with catheter manipulation and stability. There's a lot of manual force that can lead to operator fatigue, especially during long procedures, often several hours at a time. Even slight catheter movement as small as 1 to 2 millimeters can risk damage to the surrounding structures. There's close proximity between normal and abnormal tissue. This distance between those vital structures is definitely smaller in pediatrics, and there's that potential risk for complications. The ones we worry most about, one, are cardiac perforation, or causing a hole in the heart, which can lead to fluid around the heart, pericardial effusion, often requiring a procedure or surgery to save the life of the patient. The other concern is heart block, which is injury to the normal cardiac conduction system shown here. That requires often pacemaker implantation in many cases, which is usually required for the entire lifetime of the patient, which obviously in kids is hopefully a very long time. The problem is that these cardiac ablation procedures have a high risk of severe complications, which includes perforation and heart block, where small movements can lead to a major risk. These catheters require manual manipulation, frequent pinching and twisting of very small catheters with catheter diameters ranging from 1.7 to 2.3 millimeters. These procedures, again, can be very lengthy, often several hours at a time, which increases the risk of operator fatigue, which would theoretically increase that risk of complications. Our device, PeriTorque, is a soft cylindrical torque device for cardiac catheters. It is sterilizable. It fits multiple catheter sizes ranging from 3 to 9 French, which encompasses the majority of EP catheters. It is a multi-use device and can be used on multiple catheters within the same procedure. This is a design of the workflow here. First, the PeriTorque is placed on the catheter. The sled is advanced, and then the operator is able to manually operate the catheter just by manipulating the PeriTorque device. When the operator is finished, the sled is merely pulled back, pulled to the side, and then removed, and it's ready for its next use. We did 4 tests of performance in an ex vivo environment. We did grip strength analysis, which demonstrated an average slip force 10 times greater than the peak force needed to insert a catheter into a blood vessel. Slip torque testing, which showed an average slip torque 5 times greater than the torque exhibited when you rotate a catheter inside a blood vessel. Maximum grip strength testing was done and showed tool failure at nearly 2 times the maximum force that a human being can generate. And then finally, simulated use testing showed superior catheter rotation at both 90 and 180 degrees with PeriTorque compared with manual manipulation alone. Our current intellectual property, we have a provisional patent for a soft cylindrical tool device for medical devices that was filed in December 2017, a world international publication date of June 2019, and in January 2020, we were granted non-significant risk status by the Food and Drug Administration. Our regulatory timeline is for a Class 2 510K device and includes a pilot study for muscle fatigue and user experience, animal study for catheter integrity and ablation efficacy, followed by clinical trial and then 510K submission. This was presented at the American Society of Medical Engineers Design of Medical Devices Conference in 2020 and finished 3rd. Our current funding includes a Board of Visitors grant at Children's National and philanthropic funding through Dr. Wearable and Team Trace at Children's National. And currently we have a pilot study ongoing at Children's that has enrolled 11 participants, and we are IRB approved for that pilot study to be performed here at Montefiore. Our future steps include animal study, which would involve invasive EP study and ablation that would look at catheter integrity and ablation efficacy, both with and without PeriTorque, looking specifically at catheter impedance, signal sensing, and pacing capture. This would be followed by marketing to catheter companies, in addition to potential additional market accessibility with pacemaker defibrillator leads, as well as interventional cardiac catheterization. Our proposed budget is approximately $45,000. We have a prior quote for injection molding of $15,000 that would make parts for approximately 1,000 devices. This is an old quote, which we may be able to get down. Cost of an animal study of approximately $30,000, which is based on $2,000 to $3,000 per animal, which would include the animal, the facility, as well as the electrophysiology software and equipment, and that can be done on site here at Montefiore. The benefits of our device, it's a simple single-use device, can be implemented with a robust adult market. There's potential for expansion to additional fields, including pacemaker defibrillator leads and cardiac catheterizations. There's a potential for very rapid market penetration. We have intellectual property and non-significant risk status already established with a 510K Class 2 regulatory timeline and a low cost for both pilot and animal studies. Our team includes engineers and physicians from Children's National, Montefiore, Children's Hospital, Montefiore, and Nationwide Children's. And with that, I'd like to say thank you and open up to any questions.
All right, so we've only got 5 or 6 minutes at tops for questions, so let's go quick.
Hey, Bradley, this is Ken Nelson. I'm the head of digital health diagnostics and monitoring for Biotronic. Really interested in the technology and also potential applications for LV leads, especially for V implants. So any thoughts on that as another potential application?
Absolutely. And I've thought ever since we started designing this for interventional cardiac electrophysiology studies, the whole goal was to create a device with the work from our engineers that would not damage the integrity of the electricity of the catheter. So I'm very optimistic. And one of the things that I would like to move further is with pacemaker defibrillator leads as well as CS LV leads. And I'm very hopeful that they won't actually cause any interruption in the impedance or any integrity of the lead itself. And I do think that it would greatly improve the torqueability of the lead and shorten the procedural time. That is something that I envision in an animal study to test that first. And that is something I would like to move on as soon as we're able to establish the market with the catheter companies.
Great. Yeah, I saw Dr. DiBiase was on your advisory group. I actually was with them in New York 2 weeks ago. So I was up at Montefiore. I'd love to talk separately with you guys about that.
That'd be great. Luigi is a great asset. It's his animal lab. So we're really ready to roll as soon as we have the funding to move.
Great.
All right, next question.
Bradley, this is John Parker. I run Spring Hood Venture. Run Spring Hood Ventures, early stage investor focused on children's health. Can you talk to me just a little bit about the economics here? You've got something, I presume the cost of goods sold are going to be pretty low for this, but how are you going to price it? What does the market look like? And what is the business potential of this look like?
So it's hard. I can't quote too much because I don't have the exact cost of what the device will cost eventually, although my hope is that we're looking at probably around $5 per device to manufacture. And I think our business model from what we've been looking into is really based on these kind of Y adapter torque tools that they use in the cardiac catheterization lab, which really wind up being around $30 per piece, maybe $55 to $60 per unit and per case. And really what we look at in electrophysiology studies, most of our procedures are bundled and there's an overall cost for the procedure. And again, in peds, we're not doing AV node ablations, but SVTs, VTs, and pulmonary vein isolations in adults, we're looking around $20,000. So my hope is that it would be able to get purchased by the hospital, get bundled within that cost. And so it really wouldn't be too much of additional cost and really would get again bundled into the overall cost of the procedure, which has a very high reimbursement rate to the hospital for both private and Medicare, Medicaid insurances.
And what's the process of getting into that bundle?
That's a good question. I'd have to talk with our regulatory people kind of within the hospital. But we use for every given study, I use 4 to 5 sheaths. I use 4 to 5 catheters. I change catheters and all just winds up getting, for each use of the device, it gets kind of bundled into that. So I think it would go through the hospital regulatory system and be able to add that into that bundle and add it just to be as a part of an EP study and ablation, just like the torque tools are currently just added into a cardiac catheterization procedure, just within it already.
I have a quick question. Do you like using it? And isn't there a trade-off? It sounds like, you get more torque, better rotation, but don't you lose some of the tactile feel sensation that perhaps some EP docs would like?
I think I personally have used it really just in a ex vivo environment. It's very, very comfortable. Obviously, I'm biased and have a conflict of interest, but the ability to torque the catheter exactly where you want to, and not only torquing, but holding it in position, I think is the strongest asset of this device. You are right, there is a little tactile feel. I can feel when I'm very nicely on the valve. There's other things that kind of go into that, but to be honest anymore, especially in our adult colleagues, they're using so many of these catheters that have contact force and really tell them, even without that tactile feel, that they're having good contact, and we look at signals and all those things. So I agree with you, there is a slight trade-off, but the ability to torque and get where you want to get, and not only that, get there and stay there, especially when we're talking about peds where causing heart block and not could be 2 millimeters and a slight slip of my finger, that to me makes that much more worth it than that little bit of loss of kind of tactile knowing when I'm really nicely on the valve or on the heart tissue.
This is Susan Albert. I'm a little biased. I trained at Montefiore and then at Children's. But my question is, what are you what are you doing? You're already in clinical. What's the animal work for? What do you, it seems to be a little cart before the horse there. So
we're in pilot. We're in pilot so let me actually just show you all this real quick. We're currently in pilot for ex vivo studies for user kind of fatigue and experience. And then just to show you guys quickly are the preliminary results. Again, this pilot study that's going on at children. And what we're doing is we're looking at surface electromyographic sensors. So surface EMG, 6 muscle groups in the hand and forearm, and looking at the maximum voluntary contraction, in addition to looking at this NASA task load index survey, which looks like this, which kind of goes over mental demand, physical, temporal, performance, effort, and frustration. And really what we're doing is we're having trainees and cardiologists take a standard 4mm DF Biosense catheter, navigate it into the doll, and get to these 6 different targets, do it twice with the device and twice without it. And what we're finding in these 11 participants, there's less maximum voluntary contraction in all 6 of those muscle groups, so less muscle fatigue with those devices, less expended energy for one of the majors, the abductor pollicis, and then everything on that task load index, the physical demand, effort, and frustration was significantly reduced by using the PeriTorque device. So you are right, we're not really in clinical trials. This is more of kind of an ex vivo environment to show user fatigue, muscle fatigue, and user experience. And then the animal testing would really get at that safety, efficacy, catheter integrity that would be needed for that class 2 510K approval.
when you pitch, you should be much clearer about where you really are.
My apology.
All right, thank you. That's all we have time for, so thank you very much, Bradley. Okay, so next we're going to move on to Cybele Health. So Steve, if you're ready.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to present to this really amazing panel. I'm excited to talk about Cybele Health. I'm a physician engineer, a dermatologist by specialty, and have the honor and privilege to be CEO of Cybele. So the problem we're trying to solve is the ICU, especially for kids, has not changed much for the last 40 to 50 years. You look at this picture from the 1980s versus the picture from 2020, it's about the same thing. Wires, big boxes, maybe the nurse outfits have gotten slightly better, but that's pretty much it. So we've invented and developed what we call the ANI system. It's short for Advanced Neonatal Epidermal Sensor, but essentially creates the ICU-grade monitoring that many of you expect and know, and convert that into a wireless wearable system designed explicitly for kids that work with your smartphone. The sensor has on board a dual sensor system that is time synchronized, giving you pretty much the core vital signs that every person needs in the ICU, from ECG to accelerometry that allows for actually continuous phonocardiography or seismocardiography, as well as transmissive mode pulse oximetry, all in an integrated system. The sensors actually speak to each other. So actually calculate something called pulse arrival time, which is a surrogate for continuous blood pressure. So all of that is within our system, within the ANI system. And we've also added additional capabilities, additional sensors like our abdominal unit, which offers wireless Doppler. And the ANI system also works with tablets, as well as phones and smartwatches. So the chest and limb unit and our tablet and software have been submitted to the FDA for 510K clearance for adults only. We expect to be able to submit for a pediatric indication in the next 6 to 8 weeks. So all of our clinical data is done for that. So that's kind of where the stage of our technology is in terms of readiness. But our focus has really been on children. This device was developed for children as a soft, flexible sensor. It's skin safe, peel force that's 10x smaller than traditional electrodes and adhesives. And they're designed with analytics that are focused on the physiology of kids. They're not just little people, basically. This video shows our application actually within the Lurie Pediatric CCU. We work with people like Alan Nugent, Joe Forbes was recently there, and Brad Marino recently left for Cleveland Clinic, but just illustrating the performance and operation of our system on a 37-weeker with a congenital heart defect in our CCU. All of our work is published in peer-reviewed science. So Science, Nature, Nature Medicine, all in the last 2 years. Validation of the performance of the ANI system in more than 250 pediatric and neonatal critically ill subjects, including those with congenital heart defects. All of our adult validation and pediatric validation meet the FDA requirements and guidelines for new physiological monitoring systems. So we kind of checked that box working with the best centers in the world in that context. But I wanted to show you all sort of the raw data streams that are time synchronized that I think open up a lot of opportunity for both home monitoring as well as inpatient acute monitoring, where we give you ECG, seismocardiography, which is a really kind of very similar to continuous e-stethoscopy, as well as pulse oximetry, all in a single system, all within a single integrated software system. This is actually in an adult. So just to be clear, this is an adult undergoing external pacing, and you can just see the response of our system in regards to pacing and how the PPG and the ECG and the SCG waveforms really correlate together, allowing for future opportunities in data analytics. We have new technologies constantly being developed out of our group. This is a near sensor that I think will come down the line in the next 6 to 9 months. So adding to the core ANI product, but allowing for additional monitoring that may be of use in congenital heart patients. We win prizes. We were selected last year as the inaugural winner of the Nature Spinoff Prize for our focus on patients, specifically kids, that they themselves do not have a voice. So we're very proud of that. We won the top clinical research prize kind of overall in the entire United States last year for our work on wireless monitoring in the NICU. We're very proud of our partners. We've been deployed in 24 countries. These are the ones I can publicly announce. I'll highlight Draeger, which is a large medical technology company, is a major partner. Janssen Pharmaceuticals, we're a part of a large clinical trial, phase 2B, all around the world in pediatrics. And Anthem, the second largest insurer in the United States. In our global health work, we work with Save the Children Foundation and the Gates Foundation. We have 2 offices, one in the United States, one in South Korea, about 45 total full-time people, very dedicated to our mission. And we're focused. We have a strong interest in CHD. We work actively at Lurie Children's. We have an NIH-funded study. We've done more than 30 kids in the inpatient setting, but we're really excited about the opportunity to potentially work with this group to be able to deploy a small study in the home setting with the goal eventually to expand our indication of use from adults to children to specifically patients with congenital heart defects. So thank you for listening to my pitch.
All right, so judges. Let's go ahead and get some questions.
Steve, hey, this is Ken Nelson. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
So, a lot of experience with patches, having commercialized the Zio patch for iRhythm and then BioTel's patches and Barty's patches. One of the really critical areas is on sensitivity and specificity. So curious, how are you gonna prove the accuracy of different arrhythmias that you're monitoring, and then just other vital signs that you're monitoring? And are you going to do head-to-head studies to prove it, or what's your pathway to have clinical evidence around that?
Yeah, great question, Ken. Obviously very familiar with your work. I actually talked to a colleague of yours at Bioelectronics just a couple months ago. So I think we made a standard focus to not target ECG to start because of all the great companies you just mentioned. So arrhythmias have not been our initial focus. We really wanted to focus on delivering an ICU-Grade wearable system for kids, right? So we focused on miniaturization, softness, skin safety. Obviously, you have to be accurate, right? So here in this diagram, we're showing performance against Philips GE wired systems for heart rate. Our pulse oximetry is measured against Masimo or Nellcor, the gold standard in neonatal pulse oximetry. Our breathing rates measured either against capnography, like end-tidal CO2. So all of those things we check. In terms of arrhythmia sensitivity, specificity, you're absolutely right. That would be a separate clinical study. Right? Obviously, we can do simulated testing, but we'd love to do a head-to-head with iRhythm or one of these gold standard, biotelemetry-based systems for adults and atrial fibrillation. Hopefully, that will speak to what we can do in kids in terms of arrhythmia performance. I will make a point that our system is designed for children. The ECG spacing, the skin, the curvature of the chest. And so we're really focused on being able to provide the very best physiological data for kids. And all of our publications in Nature Medicine, Science kind of illustrate that performance against gold standard systems.
Yeah, I think the next wave in patches is going to be in vital signs patches. So I think you have a great product and you're heading in the right direction.
Thank you, Ken.
Hi, I'm Libby Sherwin. I'm a pediatric electrophysiologist at Children's National. I really enjoyed this talk, and I'm going to add on to the ECG, kind of more of a question and suggestion. It's a great looking product. Obviously, I'm biased towards the ECG reading, and it looks like by the size of it and the data that you've shown that it's a single ECG lead. I love that you're thinking of other ways to expand this and use it on different body parts for different vital signs. Are you thinking about an extension to be able to allow the chest patch to then get multiple ECG leads?
It's a fantastic insight and question. So we already actually have that. So we can actually synchronize 7 of our chest patches to a single tablet. So 1 lead bipolar ECG is what we have. That's kind of the standard. But if there's an interest in time synchronization or additional kind of lead investigation, you can use multiple chest patches. We also have a prototype product. As you can see, we love innovating, right? We have a Doppler, we have a NIRS. We actually have a 12 lead wearable ECG that we've also developed as well as prototype stage. So, you know, for us as a company, Dr. Sherwin, we're really not a one product company. We want to revolutionize vital signs monitoring, just like Ken's pointing out. We focus on kids because our initial investment was from the Gates Foundation. That's where I think the need is for a lot of these wireless systems, but we're not stopping there. We want to revolutionize monitoring, period, where we think everything should be nearly invisible, soft, flexible, wireless. These devices are rechargeable and reusable. So they're an order of magnitude lower per cost per day of monitoring. And that was really important because this has to be just as applicable in Africa as it does in a tertiary care center here in the United States.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And of course, the iRhythm and the Bardy devices are not approved for small children. And that's exactly who needs the patches so they can't pull them off. So thank you.
So this is Susan Albert. I'm also really impressed because it's very hard to get good data, wearable good data on little kids. And as you pointed out, and as Dr. Sherwin just pointed out, the idea of being able to do this around the world is phenomenal because we all know that it's challenging, much more challenging in a lot of other places that aren't as equipped as our hospitals. I wanted to comment that this excites me because I work with a company that I would like to introduce you to that takes this kind of data and analyzes it and gives feedback to the clinician that can be very useful. So the next step for taking this data and making it even more useful is something that I'd like to talk to you about.
I love that connection. You know, we ourselves, if we had more time, we have a cloud infrastructure behind it. We can do alerts as well. We're very interested in pediatric sepsis, for instance, as an early prediction given our system. And, you know, I think ultimately, once you harness the ability to collect ICU-grade data anywhere on anyone, then the fun part begins, right? With the data analytics, the machine learning, and artificial intelligence. So I think there's a ton of richness there. And I think one of the things I'll mention is, you know, unlike a lot of wearables where they only give you heart rate per second, we do the full waveform analysis, 512 hertz, you know, 16-bit sampling. So what you get out of an ICU grade box is what we do too. And I think that's one of the things that make us unique.
Hey, I think that's all the time we have. So thank you very much for that, Steve. Great job. All right. Next up, we have ink space imaging. So this is Peter Fisher.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon.
Hey, Peter.
I'm Peter Fisher. I'm a physicist by training, and I'm the CEO of Inkspace Imaging. Thank you for the invitation, letting us present here. I hope everyone can see my screen in full screen mode now. We have developed an MRI receive coil technology, which is pretty new. So I've combined very modern printed electronics industry knowledge with MRI coil design and created a 24-channel pediatric body cardiac blanket, and I would like to introduce it to you. So as you know, MRI is commonly used for the diagnosis and monitoring of children with congenital heart disease and other complications. And the existing MRI receive coils in the market are typically very intimidating and heavy, causing discomfort, distress, but not only in the children, but also in their parents. And since they are not optimized for children at all, and for little children obviously require sedation to do a measurement, an MRI measurement at all. On top of that, they do not have any perfect fit to the body. I've put a few example pictures here how coils in general look like. And one of the reasons is that the approach is one size fits all. So typically developed for 6-foot men and then applied to children as well. That also creates that the image quality is less optimal, obviously, if it's applied to children, and the setup times are also pretty long. So what we have developed, we have taken printed electronics and coil design together and created something which looks like a blanket. So I have a picture of our coil here in the middle, and developed a pediatric solution since there is none. So it's a 30 by 30 centimeters, 1 foot by 1 foot pad, and it's pretty thin, flexible, lightweight. And to give you an idea, this pad weighs a pound compared to the normal coils in the market currently having a weight of 6 to 10 pounds. So it obviously creates a much better patient experience, less anxiety, and also needs less convincing for both the children, but also for the parents. And the technologists in the study told us that they also can, based on that, significantly improve the setup time. And for the radiologists, the feedback is that they can drive the scanner faster and get much sharper images. We have worked intensively with the scanner OEM, so the coil technology also fits into the existing MRI infrastructure. There's nothing new to be developed. In a study we have done for approximately 2 years with a children's hospital and at Stanford University, we have, let's say, collected feedback from both radiologists and the technologists, parents, to see how our product would fit and how we can improve the product to make it even better. So you see a picture here of a 2-year-old being in an MRI scan. And one other advantage is that you can put the respiratory bellow for the patient safety on top of our flexible coil, which is obviously unthinkable if you do that with rigid coils. We have published that as well. So I've cited 2 of the studies here, which are published in Radiology. Here's an example of a few pictures we have taken, but more importantly, I want to show you how the setup of this coil works. So on the upper right-hand side video, you see one of my colleagues in MRI suite basically taking the coil, tucking the child's phantom body inside the coil, and the setup is done much less complicated than typically if you have rigid coil and they have to pile up pillows left and right and make sure that the child doesn't get squeezed, especially for the very young one and neonates. A picture of a sequence here of the heart. One other thing I would like to mention also, so this coil technology can not only be applied for children, so we also look, let's say, into our future product roadmap. 2 examples here. You have an ankle of one of our co-founders. The coil is wrapped around, and even during the movement, you can take images, MRI images nicely. Our, let's say, regulatory pathway is that we have agreed with the FDA on a 510(k) route. So we had pre-submission meetings, passed all of that, and currently working in the preparation of submitting with agencies required to submit the data then to the FDA. So our plan is to submit this to bring a new solution into the pediatric market by the end of 2021. Go-to-market strategy. So first, our goal is foremost, since there is no good solution for children out there, to focus on the pediatric coil. And then later, over the next years, also expanded to adult and extremity coils. The coil technology allows us also not only to work in the diagnostic imaging space, but based on the properties of the, let's say, of the material chosen and the design, since there's no silicon electronics sitting in the field of view, that can also be nicely used in multimodality systems. So we have already created an MR PET coil, but we also think it can be used in MR guided radiation therapy as an example. Back to the sales strategy. So we have identified that our best forward for our application, it's the beginning with initial sales ramp to go through key opinion leaders in hospitals and leverage also our OEM partner network. But then as another path, we have identified that selling through large healthcare networks such as Common Spirit Health and Kaiser Permanente and so on and so forth will be beneficial for us as a startup. In terms of partnership, we have strong bonds historically with GE and have now qualified our coil of 5 of their scanner series. We have already worked with Siemens and know the interface specification, have also developed a customized coil for them so we can have access to the Siemens scanner series, and just started work with Philips to be, let's say, able to interface with 3 of the major OEMs in the market. And then I mentioned healthcare networks. It's very important to us to have strong bonds there, to have, let's say, top-down decision also for those hospitals and from the headquarters of those healthcare groups to sell our coils into the existing infrastructure. Obviously, this all would not have been possible with a very strong team. So now we are 7 people, but the original founders you see here on the right-hand side. So Anna Arias is an expert in printed electronics. Mickey Lustig is a world-renowned expert in MRI, and they joined forces and started to develop together with a PhD student of them this new MRI coil pad. In terms of milestones and give you ideas, so the incorporation of the company was already in 2016. So over the last months, we have mainly focused on iron out all technical issues and stressing our, let's say, manufacturing process, supply chain system, building a QMS system. So currently we're in the process in preparing our technical submission to the FDA and plan to do so in Q3, and then get approval from the FDA through a 510K route by the end of the year. Currently, to then lead us also through the initial manufacturing and sales after FDA, I started to raise some money to make sure that we have enough time before a price round towards the end of 2022 to further grow the company. And with that, I would like to thank everyone for the attention, and thanks again for the invitation.
Thank you, Peter. All right, so judges, questions.
Nice presentation. This is Rosemary Truman. I had a question about your economics and where you're raising your money from. You said you started to raise the money. How far are you into the 1.5 million?
$600,000. So in the past, we have been most successful with individuals, angels here in the Bay Area. So we are located in Pleasanton, California, on the east side of the Bay. Typically, we have raised money from angels, and in the last round, we also had one VC participating, and currently I'm discussing with one of those large healthcare groups to also participate in that round. That would have, besides the money, the advantage also getting the commitment in terms of a rollout of our coils, and obviously from a, let's say, price round perspective, end of next year, it would also look very nice to have a strategic partner already in the boat of the investors. So historically, mainly angels. This is how we've done it here, and then one VC, and now potentially a strategic investor, one of those healthcare groups.
And I noticed that you had a pay-per-use and basically a razor blade model for your coils.
Not yet. So there is one request. So first of all, let's say how coils typically get sold currently into hospital. It's when hospitals acquire MRI scanners and then buy a set of MRI coils with it. Typically 7 to 10 coils is what you find in MRI suite, and let's say well-established hospitals might have even more. And then there is an additional acquisition of coils over the years, typically 10% of the hospitals. And I looked into, so this is typically bought as a CapEx item. And what I've seen for other applications, and specifically also through a request from one OEM to develop a disposable coil where you basically can disconnect the pad from the cable. And their motivation, or the hospital motivation, probably is that they want to separate it. For instance, if they have patients with chemotherapy or something, they don't want to pass on the pads from one patient to the other patient, but have a customized pad. Since we have, we are using print electronics and have designed most of the expensive silicon electronics outside of the pad. It's all sitting in the cable. Our BOM cost distribution is very favorable for that. So our pad costs less than a third of the overall cost. So that's why it makes sense to think about this kind of disposable and also pay-by-use model where, and we haven't developed that yet. That's just one idea for the future, how to do that, that you actually sell a set, but then hospitals might return those coils and we sell new coils, right? Or for a certain amount of time they're using it, for certain customers they are using it.
And so what are your barriers to entry for this? I mean, so what I mean by that is it seems like it's replicatable. I didn't hear you talk about patents or anything.
So no, I haven't. It's in the extended deck. So we have let's say a series of patents, and some of which were developed back at the University of California, Berkeley. So we've signed an exclusive licensing agreement, which is very favorable for the company. It's only a 2% royalty compared to others I've seen in the past. I think it's a very good. That's a very good deal. So we have done a good job, and we are currently trying to also ring fence those with new IPs. To give you an idea, I mean, I'm happy to share the publicly available patents. So the feedback we got from Siemens engineers was one very nice one where I guess they were not supposed to tell us, but they told us that the original patents from the university are super strong and super wide in terms of flexibility for coils. So we think we are very well protected. And then components we have developed over the last 2 years, we also, let's say, try to protect those patents.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the question.
All right, do we have any other questions?
Could you, this is Gordon, I'm in the reimbursement space. I'm interested in your short and long-term pricing thoughts, particularly as you speak with some of the big players. And I think it's great you mentioned Philips and Siemens and GE. They're tremendous collaborative partners there. Have you thought at all with them about, you know, what you think is going to make sense in terms of short-term pricing, long-term pricing?
Yes, we did. So we did a market study to check, okay, what coils are out there, competitive landscape, laid that out, and what is the pricing for it. And pretty much, if you think about rigid coils, it is basically the price is a function of the number of channels and some functionality, right? I mean, you will know that better than I. So the typical coils range somewhere for the very, let's say, low channel coils from $4,000, $8,000 and go up to $100,000. And then GE has brought one kind of semi-flexible coil into the market and is selling it for north of $200,000. And so we think, since we don't have a Siemens or GE name tag on our door yet, that we will position ourselves in the $50,000, $60,000 price range for that coil. And that got confirmation both from one of the OEMs when we had, let's say, discussions, and they shared what they think we should, let's say, ask for. And they mentioned exactly this price point, 50, 60. And it got also confirmed by some of the work we have done in hospitals that that would be an acceptable price. And to answer this question you haven't asked yet, so the manufacturing costs are in the range of $9,000 to $10,000 at the current stage, at a startup stage with super low volumes, right? And we are not trying to go through the roof with the volumes in the next 3 years. So one thing which is very important for me is that we keep the quality very high from day one. That's also what I hear from all of the OEMs you're talking to. There are too many bad experiences. And actually, I'm coming out of the display and silicon DRAM industry originally before I went into startup land. And there, the quality standards, I think, are significantly higher and tougher than what radiologists have to face in MRI suites. So what I saw in hospital in discussion with radiologists, that basically every month one of those coils has an issue. So we're very much focusing also on the reliability of the coil and target a lifetime of 10 years. But we're pushing also all the mechanical stresses. And this is where coils typically fail then. Since, you know, they get, I don't want to say throw around, but get bent and, you know, someone drops something on it and so on and so forth. So we are fulfilling all these requirements, and we will target a slow ramp to ensure the quality, but that will help us also then to, let's say, drop our BOM cost step by step. But the gross margin on the 60-70% range targeted, so that's, I think, pretty acceptable for everyone in electronics manufacturing.
All right, so we could have time for one last question if anyone's got one. Going once, going twice. I'll ask one question for you, Peter. So what are you hoping to get out of being part of this program if selected?
So part of this program, obviously, I would love to work together also with Children's National and their partners, right? Since we are just in a phase where we We are through all the technical holds we had. We have, let's say, ironed that out, and we are currently in preparing for FDA. So now the next step is to connect with more hospitals in the US. So obviously we're having work here in Stanford, and we are having work with UCSF and another hospital in the midst of the US, but I want to expand our networks, and Children's National obviously would be a great partner. And then also one other thing, since we have judges here also from, let's say, the financial industry, to call it like that, we are planning a Series A in next year. So I'm looking for partners also who can help us to form a great team to make this company successful.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Peter. So,
Oh, can I just ask one more question?
yes, please.
Peter, what is your Series A going to look like? How much are you raising?
So we haven't defined that yet, since and the reason why that is currently unspecific is we have very strong interest from one of the healthcare groups. So the current convertible note might be even larger. They might put more money in now, and it's not a priced round as a convertible note. So originally, let's say the thought process was the Series A might be somewhere in the, let's say, $5 to $10 million range, not larger than that.
All right, thank you, Peter.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question.
Good question. All right. So that's our first half of our presentations. Great job, everyone, for that. So really enjoyed those and looking forward to discussing them with the judges later today. All right, so let's go ahead and turn off the, I'll stop the sharing. So for our next short period of time, we're gonna have a keynote by someone who I'm really excited about. Ken Nelson is a person who I've had the pleasure of working now with for several years. He is a real driving force in remote cardiac monitoring, and just in general, a real amazing person to talk to about building teams, culture in an organization. He's been part of 3 of the top 4 market players these days in remote cardiac monitoring, like biotelemetry, iRhythm, Barty Diagnostics, where we got to work with him at MedTech Innovator. And now he's at Biotronic, which I'm sure he'll tell you all about. But Ken, if you want to go ahead and tell us a little about yourself and give us a talk.
Yeah, sure. Really appreciate the intro, Paul. And I had the pleasure of actually getting together with Paul out here in Southern California for a couple hours yesterday at another emerging MedTech event. And so when I was thinking about what to talk about today, you're probably wondering what kind of impact that this pitch event might have on your company. And what I can tell you is helping to build the team and the culture and commercialize the product at Barty Diagnostics. When I got to Barty, we didn't have a ton of awareness about the company. We didn't have a ton of adoption of the product. And I made the decision that I needed to get out there and do some of these pitch events. And this was the very first one that I was a part of for the company. The company wasn't involved with them at all. In fact, some of the board members, or at least one, had said, why waste your time going to pitch events, let alone a pediatric focused pitch event? And honestly, they could not have been more wrong. This was the first one we did. And so I went, and I remember meeting the team, meeting Kalali and others, and then eventually met Catherine from MedTech Innovator. But that particular event, the one that you are pitching at today, was a springboard for Barty Diagnostics. It was not only incredible just getting your pitch down to that 5 minutes, which is really, really tough to do it. You crisp your message up. It really gets you to practice. And then what comes from doing the event and meeting other startups, and hopefully you'll start to do these in person sooner rather than later. But it led to meeting so many other passionate entrepreneurs and just the whole ecosystem of investors to strategics to other people who were just so open and willing to help and to help you raise awareness and drive adoption of the technology. So if you go back to the fall of 2018, we pitched Barty, we pitched our cam patch, and we were very fortunate to have won or been one of the winners of the event. And that led to working with people at Children's National and talking to people at other major children's hospitals across the country. And pediatrics was a small focus of the company before I got there. And then when I got there, I made it a significant focus, and it became 20% plus, 20-25% of our volume and our growth. And I don't think that we realized how important it was. I think our indication was for patients 22 pounds or greater. And our competition was not indicated at all for pediatrics. So iRhythm was our biggest competition. I'd helped build that company several years prior. And so we had a product that was better. It was more accurate. You could actually see P waves with much better visibility. And this particular event was the springboard that led to meeting Paul Grand and Catherine and the team at MedTech Innovator and pitching to them and eventually being fortunate to participate in that accelerator program, which made introductions to other venture capital groups some of which ended up investing in Barty in Series B. It led to Health Tech Arkansas, which was another accelerator program that we participated in, and who invested in the company. And this was all because we said, hey, let's start to get out there and participate in these pitch events. And we really put tons of time and effort into driving awareness and adoption in the pediatric market, which is totally underserved market. And so now this has made me really passionate about trying to get the implantable world, which is I'm back in cardiac rhythm management. I started with Guidant in Boston Scientific 20 years ago and did that for 10 years before going into the external patch wearable startup space. And now I'm back in the injectable world, implantable world with Biotronic leading digital health diagnostics and monitoring. And one of the things that I'm doing now is how do we take some of the really cool, innovative technology we have and make sure we get indications for pediatrics. So if you're wondering what this event can do for you, it really was the catalyst that led to these other accelerator programs, that led to us pitching at many different events and being really fortunate and lucky that we took the time and effort to network at these events and meet other investors and meet other strategic potential investors or partners. And the company commercialized the product faster than any patch product has ever been commercialized in the industry. And we went from $1 million a year when I first got there to $30 million a year 3 years later. And we're currently, Barty's in the process of hopefully getting acquired by Hillrom. And a lot of that has to do, and the acceleration of that happening with us participating in this pediatric device innovation event back in the fall of 2018. So if you're wondering what it can do for you, that's really what it did for us. I don't think we would have gotten where we were able to get at that accelerated path if we didn't compete in this event and pitch the company, which gave us the insight, the confidence, the networking relationships to go do this time and time again and raise the awareness, drive adoption, get additional funding. So really grateful to Kalali, to Paul, to all of your teams at Children's National, at MedTech Innovator, and then the other partner organizations, and there's a lot of them. And they are very passionate about what they do and willing to help you. And if you put the time and effort in, they're going to make great introductions for you. And hopefully you have a similar path to what we experienced at Barty. So really grateful. Thank you so much for having me as a judge. Thanks for having me as a speaker. Happy to share some of that experience with others if you're interested after the event. And, just really excited to be a part of continued innovation in the pediatric space.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Ken. Really inspiring, amazing history. Your experience is certainly kind of unparalleled in this particular space. And I think you made a really good point about putting the time and energy into this. It's not just pitching today, right? I mean, it takes effort. You don't just pitch, get accepted, and then watch some videos and sit back and compete one more time, be done. It takes a lot of energy and effort to get the rewards on the other end. So just real quick, I'm just curious, if you could just take 1 minute and just talk about,
Sure.
Is that kind of particular topic, is this something you can just sit back, or what's it like? What do you have to do to pull off the kind of success you've had?
Oh, wow. So as I think probably everybody in the room that's trying to build these organizations, these startups, knows this is not a job. I mean, this is a way of life. You have to absolutely love the technology in the company. I feel like if you do, everybody knows it. If you know why you're doing it, everyone in the organization knows. And if you can translate that, and I think Simon Sinek, his Start With Why book and concept really is helpful. And I think we built the culture around that and a team of people around that. And everybody was excited about what we were doing and why we were doing it. And for us, the founder at Barty Diagnostics, his wife had died of sudden cardiac death after wearing 10 different external monitors that couldn't really see her P wave and couldn't really distinguish what type of atrial arrhythmias she was having. And she was having really fast, rapid atrial arrhythmias. And so you hear that story. This is an electrophysiologist. They spent their whole life dealing with that. And for me, my father-in-law, right before I met Gus Barty, Dr. Barty, my own father-in-law had died of sudden cardiac death, totally unexpectedly. We had no idea he had even had any cardiac issues. And when that happens, and you're somebody like myself who spent 10 years in cardiac rhythm management, putting in implantable pacemakers and defibrillators, and then the next 10 years building the teams and cultures that became the top two biggest companies in cardiac monitoring, iRhythm and biotelemetry, and then this happens to a close family member, you just feel like there's so much more we still need to do to fight arrhythmias and to get patients diagnosed with arrhythmias, to treat the arrhythmias. And if you can tell the personal story and tie your personal story into why you're doing what you're doing, you can recruit a team of people that believe in what you're believing. And it's not just a job for people, it becomes a mission. And if you can create a mission for people and build a team and a culture, and I really fundamentally believe if you don't have the team and the culture, you're not bringing in the right people, you don't have the right culture, you can have the best product in the world and you're never going to be able to commercialize it to the extent that you need to be successful and at an accelerated pace. So I think it's that. It's got to be a part of your life. Your work-life balance is going to be not in the balance that you want long-term, but to get things done at an accelerated pace, you have to have that kind of passion. And I think everybody in the room hopefully has that passion. And if you don't, and if you've started a company and you aren't that passionate about it, you might want to think about something else or selling that idea. Because if you're not fully in, you're not fully passionate about it, it takes that kind of time and energy to do it. So hopefully everybody feels the same way about what they're doing. And love to be able to help as many of you as I can with that same pathway. But we've been very fortunate, very lucky, and sometimes that comes into play as well.
Well, Ken, I couldn't agree more. And that passion comes across the way you just described, what it takes to drive this forward and establish a culture that people want to follow and be part of and contribute to, a mission. You said it really well. So thank you for that. And again, for everyone, Ken has offered a couple times here to be a resource. His contact information is in that bio book, and he's available. So please do reach out to him. I know personally that he loves to help companies. So that is a genuine offer. Don't be shy about reaching out. So thank you, Ken, for that.
Sure.
So we have a break coming up. I know for some people, if you need to take a break, certainly you're welcome to go do that. We did want to do some introductions as well, or at least to acknowledge some of the people who are here and part of the NCC PDI team who are watching the live stream. So Kalala, before people go take a break, did you want to go ahead and do that?
Yeah, thank you so much, Paul, and thank you so much, Ken, for the kind words. And the best part of this is when our graduates come back and mentor others. So we really value your time and your generous offer to mentor others that are in your shoes 3 years ago. I wanted to acknowledge our fantastic team from the National Capital Consortium for Pediatric Device Innovation. All of them are watching this event on live stream. So wanted to make sure to acknowledge Francesca Joseph, Dr. Francesca Joseph, Dr. Alyssa Abo, Dr. Anu Dial, Dr. Kevin Cleary, Dr. Julia Finkel, Dr. Lex Schultheis, Dr. Marta Wang, my best right hand, Lisa Romano. So they're all here and they all helped screen all the applications that came in. We are very happy to be working with the MedTech Innovator again on a great event. All the presentations were fantastic and I enjoyed them. I want to also acknowledge that this event would not have been possible without the grant that we are receiving from the FDA, from the Pediatric Grant Program at the FDA. So this program was initially approved by the Congress in 2007, then reauthorized in 2013, and then in 2018. And we really hope that it will be reauthorized again. So it really depends on an act of Congress to keep this going. And as we know, being in a small pediatric market, we do need more incentives, both in terms of carrots and sticks. So carrot is this, the grants that we're receiving from the FDA to incentivize entrepreneurs to think pediatrics, and hopefully, some regulations, maybe not harsh ones, but regulations also help often. So with that, thanks again, Paul, thanks to you and your fantastic team to being such great partners with us all these years.
Thank you very much, Kalala. We love being partners with you too. All right, so we're going to take a short break here. It's just 3 after right now, so let's come back here in 7 minutes. So take a 7-minute break, and then we will continue with our presentations. For our judges, if any of you are having any kind of difficulty in your using the judging form, I just want to remind you that at the end of the form, there's a little button that says submit. We encourage you to finish your review and hit submit before you go on to the next company. However, if you're not able to do that, you can use the save as draft button that will put it up in the cache in your browser up in the corner. There'll be a little number. It'll say like 1 if this is the first time you've saved, 2 or 3 if you've saved 2 or 3 forms. And then you can always click that number in the corner of your browser to reopen it and finish your submission. So judges, if you haven't had a chance to finish your evaluations, that's the way you can save them for later. And make sure you don't close your browser because those are cached in your browser. And if you close your browser, you will lose anything you've cached. So if you're saving drafts, please make sure not to close your browser. All right, so we'll see you back here in 7 minutes. If you guys want to turn off your cameras, turn off your sound, that's fine. And we'll turn them back on in 7 minutes. All right, everyone. So I hope you guys had a good break. I'm excited for the next round of pitches. These ones so far were terrific. So I'm very looking forward to the next round of presentations. So for all of our judges, hopefully you guys are all back. If you're not back yet, please go ahead and just turn on your monitor so we know that you are here. And in general, we want to make sure, again, judges, that you are taking the time to fill out those forms. If you have any questions or any difficulties, please message Jerry and he will help you out with that. So let's go ahead and let's get into our next group of presentations. The next company is going to be Carios Technologies. So if you want to go ahead and share your slide, we will go ahead and resume our competition. Thank you, Greg.
All right. Hey, everyone. Zoom's not made for curly hair, so sorry about the weird halo, just the way it goes. 5 minutes, right?
Yep, 5 minutes, yep. Cool. So just, you can, if you want, you can watch the chat. There are little warnings that come in there, but yeah, 5 minutes for the presentation.
Perfect. All right, well, I'll get started. Well, hi, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to talk with you today. My name is Dr. Greg Grover. I'm the CEO, co-inventor, and co-founder of Carios Technologies. At Carios, we believe the future of surgery starts with protecting the hearts of patients. Today, we're going to talk about the dark side of surgery, which are post-surgical adhesions. All surgeries result in the formation of internal fibrous scar tissue or adhesions. This is particularly important for the heart because the heart's natural barrier to adhesion prevention is removed during surgery, leaving it unprotected. During the healing process, this scar tissue can fuse the heart to neighboring tissues in the chest cavity, resulting in adhesions. And these pose serious risks to patients, especially those requiring reoperation. These include scarring, hemorrhaging, impaired function, reoperation, pain, and even death. Our solution is Tissue Shield, a novel sprayable hydrogel that rapidly coats and protects the heart with a temporary barrier. This barrier prevents the formation of scar tissue or adhesions to the heart. When you prevent adhesions, you prevent the complications associated with them. This leads to better patient outcomes, reduced operation times, easier reoperations, and cost savings for hospitals. No adhesions means safer surgeries. There's a large unmet need within the cardiac surgery space because there's no solution or product currently available to prevent these adhesions. There's over 500,000 open heart surgeries per year, with greater than 20% being reoperations, and congenital heart defect patients compose about 30,000 of these patients. Greater than 70% of these reoperation patients will have severe cardiac adhesions present, and overall, this creates a large financial burden on the US healthcare system. Tissue Shield is a proven prototype. The heart on the left was left unprotected after heart surgery, and as a result, you can see a severe adhesion form to the left side of the chest. The heart on the right was protected with Tissue Shield, and you can see no adhesions are present. Our technology is protected by 3 patents from UCLA and UCSD with exclusive licenses and supported by 4 peer-reviewed publications. Our most recent publication coming out in Nature Communication shows the value of Tissue Shield, where we use it within a surgical workflow where it's applied directly before closing the chest in our porcine model. We also show safety and efficacy in our rodent and porcine models and clinical translation of our prototype spray applicator being used by a surgeon. We succeed where others have failed because we specifically designed Tissue Shield for ease of use by cardiothoracic surgeons and to prevent adhesions specifically for the heart. We're ready to use out of the packaging. We require no sutures to secure our product in place. We have an anti-clogging spray delivery mechanism with an added tissue binder to keep our product where you place it. We're the lowest swelling, longest lasting hydrogel on the market. This means no complications induced from high swelling as has been seen with other materials, and our longer lifespan gives the heart more time to heal and prevent these adhesions from forming. Our team has deep experience across various aspects of this space, including surgeons, chemists, engineers, and people with marketing experience. Between our team and advisors, we have over 80 years of cardiac surgery experience, 57 years of experience with injectables and cardiac devices. We've translated 5 products to the clinic and have direct experience with Class 3 medical devices. We're focusing on the US CHD patients. These result in greater than $5.6 billion in costs per year. They're only 3.7% of the hospitalizations, but greater than 50% of the total costs. Our goal with Tissue Shield is first, we want to help these children because there's currently no product available to prevent these adhesions, resulting in easier and safer reoperations by reducing complications associated with these cardiac adhesions. And this will save surgeons time and hospitals money. The average CHD surgery costs over $92,000. with CHDs composing about 28,500 procedures per year. We project to sell our product at $2,000 a unit, which is less than 2.2% the average cost of these procedures. We have our regulatory team and key resources in place to get through the FDA. We'll be working with NAMSA's MRO program and Ken Block Consulting, and our regulatory advisor, Dr. Patel, is former FDA, who was there when Repel CV received its approval. Here's our key milestones over the next 6 quarters. Specifically, I want to focus on the green row there, where that's what we would use this money from if we were to win this competition, is to enable our porcine dosing study. It will enable us to synthesize our polymers that result in the hydrogel, as well as generation of more clinical prototypes to use in this study. Our goal is to become the standard of care for post-surgical adhesion prevention. We believe the cardiac market to be worth over $1 billion annually, and we want to focus on these CHD patients and bad to transplants. When we work there, we can transition over to valve and CABG patients. We're a Class 3 medical device requiring an IDE and PMA from the FDA. We're currently pursuing a breakthrough device designation. There's already a product code with the FDA and a reimbursement code in place for a product like ours. Tissue Shield is a platform technology. When we work in the heart, we'll work for other types of organs and tissue systems, including abdominal, gynecologic and obstetric, tendon, and joint. Partner with us for the future of surgery. And that's it. Thank you.
Great, Greg. Thank you very much. All right, judges, questions.
For the presentation, this is Rosemary Truman. I just wanted to get an understanding of your product roadmap.
Yeah. And I can also show you our 5-year plan as well, if you'd like to see that.
I was just wondering, maybe you can verbally just walk me through the product roadmap. You know,
sure.
In particular, I was wondering, is your product, is your invention, could it be applied to transplants and other organs as well?
Yes. Yeah. So this is a platform technology. So it's ubiquitous to the tissue and organ systems it's being applied to. We're focusing on the heart first because, you know, these CHD patients have a high likelihood of reoperation and there's nothing to prevent these adhesions. So that's why, you know, Dr. Michael Madani, Professor Chrisman, and myself created this product in this company. We're currently, we're not an R&D company, so we're translating through. Our goal is to get to our first in human clinical trial as quickly as possible. So the next thing we have to do is this porcine dosing study, very similar to what CoSeal did in their pediatric study. So our lowest dose was mimicking the CoSeal dose. And now we want to do a higher dosing range to show safety in our porcine model, and then close out our preclinical testing suite to enable approval for an FIH study.
Okay.
Can I provide more information there, or I'm not sure if I clearly answered your question?
That's okay. We can take it offline.
Okay.
Dr. Grover, this is Gordon Schatz. I'm in the reimbursement space, and I was very pleased to see you've already put in some good thinking about reimbursement, but a question and maybe a concern. Let me, in fact, start off with the fact you've got here your breakthrough device application, and they're looking at the breakthrough designation in 2022. I think is tremendous. That breakthrough designation can really open up a number of reimbursement opportunities. However, right now they're limited in the Medicare space for individuals who are 65 years of age and older. So you may want to continue to probe a little on how that can apply in the pediatric application. And I would be cautious that C1765 C code, you're right, it is a HCPCS code. It only applies again in the Medicare space and only in hospital outpatient settings. It is a transitional pass-through. It was created for another product and it will sunset at some point. The fact that they created one that may be available is important, but query, would you be able to reposition, reformulate the C code to create something new and start that transitional payment fresh with a different product, but something which still qualifies?
So that would be our goal. I want to be transparent here. I'm not a reimbursement expert, so this just comes from, you know, the few communication. We're building that expertise in our team. As soon as we, at the end of this next quarter, we'll be hiring a regulatory advisor to work full-time with us and work through on this path. Our goal is to start with the FDA as well as the CDRH's early payer communication program through the Q submission process. And I think you bring up some great points. Thank you for pointing out the current code that we have listed. And our goal would ideally to create our own code here. But I just want to show that there's already a thought process in place for these types of materials.
That's great. Thank you. And your point about, perhaps a new procedure or a new code, I think is something you want to stay open to. And certainly during that regulatory process, you want to engage with your regulatory people. So they're thinking about FDA reimbursement at the same time. Thank you.
Yeah, great comments. Appreciate it.
Hey, Greg, this is Charles Bridges with Johnson & Johnson. I'm a cardiac surgeon by training, as I mentioned before. So this is a big unsolved problem, right? This, as you point out, it's a huge issue, especially with kids, many of whom will have 2, 3, and sometimes 4 or 5 cardiac reoperations. A couple questions. A, how well does it really work? Because you showed us one nice picture of a heart with adhesions and then another heart without. Well, we can always find one picture that looks great. But that doesn't tell the story. Is it 1,000 times it works, and only 5 times it doesn't work, and you pick or is it 5 times it works and 1,000 it doesn't, and you pick the one chance? You can't tell that from your presentation. So convince us that this is like the greatest thing in this space, because the one picture doesn't. And then, is toxicity an issue with this compared to the other alternatives?
So safety and efficacy in our rodent animal model, we had 8 subjects at 2 time points where no adhesions were present. I think one subject had 1 minor adhesion that was flimsy, barely classified as that, versus the controls had severe adhesions. In our porcine study, we had 2 subjects at 2 time points that received our product, 3 and 6 weeks, and then a few control subjects. We saw with this lowest dose that CoSeal had used that we eliminated all severe adhesions and only had minor adhesions present. That's why we're currently want to conduct our porcine dosing study using a higher dose, which we think will prevent the severe adhesions as well, like the lower dose, and hopefully prevent all adhesions, right? So the goal here is kind of tiered. And this is similar to what was seen for Repel CV. They didn't eliminate all adhesions. They didn't even eliminate the severe adhesions. They just showed a decrease from 70% to 40% of the patients having a likelihood of severe adhesions. Our initial goal is to eliminate these severe adhesions, leaving only minor adhesions that require blunt dissection. Our overall goal is to prevent all of them in all instances. In regards to toxicity, our product degrades back into byproducts that are biocompatible. So we've seen great histopathology compliance in regards to biodegradability and biocompatibility in the heart and chest space when we've looked at the tissues from our animal and porcine studies. And the molecular weight and size of these products upon degradation results in them being excreted out through the urine. However, this is something that we will also characterize in our porcine dosing study. The long and the short of it is there's a few current materials in the abdominal space. Nobody's pursuing this heart application. And we have features that none of these other current products or products that are in development have. We have a binder where we stick where you put us. We only swell 30% and we last 6 to 8 weeks. And so our goal here is to conduct this porcine study to really show the duration and ability across doses of the safety and effectiveness of our product to enable conversations with cardiothoracic surgeons like yourself, and then to transition through the first in human. So I think this is a really exciting platform, and we're starting with the hardest problem first. And I wouldn't want to do it any other way. These children need something that can help them, and we've designed this product specifically to be successful there. I'm not sure how good of a job I did there, but that's what we got.
Great.
So this is.
Go ahead, Susan.
No, I just wanted to say that I very much appreciate the fact that you're starting in peds, in the place where it's not the most lucrative, and it's not the only place, but it's a place of great need, as you point out, the number of operations that some of these kids have, and making each of those operations better for the patient as well as for the surgeon is going to be wonderful. So I really commend that you're starting with pediatric cardiology. So thank you.
We appreciate that. And then just briefly add on, our conversations with both the director of the CDRH and the CMO of pediatric and specialty devices at the FDA echoed our approach. They know that this is a big problem. They support us going after peds first. and we're going to work with the FDA on our preclinical biological evaluation plan and clinical study design. Sorry, Eric, I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, no worries. Eric Chen from Abbott, Director of Regulatory Affairs. Before that was at FDA Cardiovascular for 16 years. I was curious, in your presentation, you talked about the Repel CV and how yours might be slightly different. It's a sprayable hydrogel, right? And we know that Repel CV was a bioresorbable patch that's put on the heart. I'd be curious, it kind of goes along the lines of what Dr. I can't remember his name, but he had said was, toxicity and so forth. Can you go into a little more yeah, Dr. Bridges, sorry, thanks for that. Can you go into more details about the porcine model? You didn't give any time points as to how long the animals were subjected to the product, and whether or not you saw any other adhesions or anything like that. Did you try to do any additional surgical techniques to say, okay, after 6 weeks or 9 weeks, and if you tried to go back into the heart, what happened?
This will be our last question, so make it a good one.
It was 3 to 6 weeks were the 2 time points. Our current porcine model involved opening of the pericardium and abrading the surface of the heart about 100 times with gauze. This was just an initial proof of concept to show translation of our clinical prototype being used by a surgeon and to investigate the lowest dose if it had any efficacy and in the porcine model, any safety concerns. There were no safety concerns in the rodent or the porcine model. Heart function was outstanding, no effect on a fractional shortening or anything like that. And we know that there are very delicate architectures, both in the porcine and especially the rodent heart. The next phase here is to expand our dose testing range, and we also want to make our model more clinically relevant. What do I mean by that? We're going to continue with the opening of the pericardium and abrading the surface of the heart. We're also going to add also to note, we abrade the surface of the heart, remove 15 milliliters of blood from the aorta and apply that directly to the heart surface, and then add our material. So we want to mimic the messiness of an actual clinical surgery here. What we're going to add to this is a cross clamp on the aorta, a suture line, as well as a pledget. And what that'll give us is a variety of key things that we've heard from talking to other cardiothoracic surgeons and our advisors, where they're concerned, how's it going to prevent the adhesions to the sutures? How's it going to interact with the pledget? These foreign bodies. Also, what happens when you do more work on the aorta, for example? So that's where we're evolving our animal model to. And that's the next phase, is we want to look at longer time points across different doses with a more robust surgical procedure. And that's where this funding, to make a pitch for the funding, would help. It would help generate the clinical prototypes and the material required for this large animal, larger subject number study.
Great, thank you very much, Greg. We are going to move on then to our next presentation. So next up, we got Starlight Cardiovascular, Mark presenting. Or Beverly, excuse me, is presenting.
Can you see my screen and hear me?
I can, Beverly. Good to see you.
Okay, good to see you, Paul. Thanks. So, hi, everyone. I'm Bev Tang, co-founder and CEO of Starlight Cardiovascular. At Starlight, we've brought together an incredibly experienced and motivated team that is dedicated to solving unmet needs for children born with congenital heart disease. We're very excited to be here today, and I'm very happy to be presenting with our VP of R&D, Mark Yurovich. We have also put together a great network of partners, including an engaged medical advisory board of both pediatric cardiothoracic surgeons and interventional cardiologists. So imagine that you've just welcomed a new baby into your family, but within a day, she starts to turn blue due to lack of oxygen. She's part of the 1% of babies that are born each year with a congenital heart defect. You're told that your newborn needs an emergency procedure to survive. The two options are heart surgery performed on a cardiopulmonary bypass, where a shunt is sewn in, or a catheter-based procedure where a stent is placed to open a naturally occurring conduit called the ductus arteriosus. Most parents and clinicians would choose the catheter procedure. The ductus arteriosus joins the pulmonary and systemic circulations in utero and usually closes within the baby's first week. But in certain critical congenital heart defects, the ductus is the only thing keeping the baby alive, supplying blood to either the lungs or the body. In the past 10 years or so, interventional cardiologists have begun to use stents to keep the ductus open and replace the surgical procedure.
However, there are no stents approved for ductal stenting, and there are many problems with repurposing off-the-shelf coronary or biliary stents in the ductus anatomy, which can lead to a reported 47% reintervention rate. Not surprisingly, the delivery systems are also too large for newborn anatomy. Tortuous anatomy prevents stiff balloon-mounted systems from navigating around the bends of the ductus, and complex 3D anatomy makes exact length measurements under 2D fluoroscopy different, often leading to choosing the wrong stent size or double or triple stenting. In contrast, our self-expanding Lifeline stent is designed specifically for the ductal stenting procedure and offers a number of benefits over the currently repurposed adult coronary stents. The small microcatheter delivery system reduces vasospasm risk and allows for much smoother navigation of tortuous ducts compared to balloon-mounted systems. The flange design prevents migration and anchors a stretchable stent body that provides end-to-end vessel coverage without having to know the exact length of the ductus. Anchoring mechanisms and adjustability features take advantage of the ductus's unique anatomy between two great vessels and are included in the provisional patents that we've already filed. And finally, the stent balances conformability and radial force that allows the ductus to be kept open even in curved anatomies.
Starlight recognized very early on that it will require a toolbox of devices to treat congenital heart disease. We used the Stanford Biodesign filtering methodology to prioritize a list of 50 unmet clinical needs in this space, which factored in patient impact, market opportunity, technical and clinical risk, regulatory pathway, and reimbursement. This prioritization led us to the first 3 devices in our portfolio, all which make life-saving procedures less invasive. Our portfolio will drive value by increasing access because in certain cases, there are only a few physicians that can or are willing to perform these procedures due to a lack of usable tools. We will also move procedures toward less invasive approaches, which will reduce hospital costs and length of stay and decrease costly morbidity and mortality. The total addressable ductal stenting market is estimated at 1,800 patients per year in the US. These life-saving procedures are typically reimbursed under hospital DRGs with high payment rates. And because of already well-established manufacturing procedures, we can expect high gross margins of 85% or more and a $10 million per year revenue on this device alone, with a worldwide total addressable market of $90 million per year. When we add in the other 2 devices to the portfolio with very conservative ramp rates, we can grow our revenues to over $50 million per year, ensuring long-term viability for the company.
We will pursue regulatory approval for the Lifeline stent using the expedited HDE pathway and are planning for our first Q-sub to confirm our clinical trial strategy before the end of this year. Because of the very concentrated market, we can build a small commercialization team to target the top 25 children's hospitals that perform a majority of the cases.
We're currently raising a $10 million Series A financing that will get us through the launch of the Lifeline stent, as well as through a number of important milestones for our other 2 beachhead projects. Our goal is to match our Series A raise with additional non-dilutive funding through grants in order to maximize value for our investors. Specifically, the funding received through the NCC PDI would be used to support a critical animal study for the ductus stent that is planned for the end of this year. In summary, we are on our way to launch of the first stent designed specifically for the ductus in 2023. We have started to build a portfolio of devices to ensure long-term viability, and we have put together a talented and motivated team to carry out this mission. We hope you will support our efforts in helping to heal little hearts. Thank you.
Thank you, Bev and Mark. All right, judges, questions.
Bev and Mark, this is Gordon Schatz. Great presentation. Thank you so much. Can you chat a little bit about your thinking on drug-eluting stent versus bare metal?
Yeah, that is a great question, and thanks so much for the question. We have talked to a number of physicians. Obviously, they are using currently repurposed coronary stents. Some are drug-eluting, some are bare metal. Our current design is a bare metal stent. We don't think that you need drug-eluting stent. There's no reason to use a drug-eluting stent in this particular purpose. It's a totally different vessel than a coronary vessel. The drugs that are being used for coronary vessels are for neointimal hyperplasia. That's not the type of physiology that we're dealing with in the ductus arteriosus. So we don't believe that we'll need a drug-eluting stent for this purpose.
Thank you.
Hey, this is Ken Nelson with Biotronic. A lot of big players in the stent space. We've just started to get into the stent space. Can you talk a little bit about your patent portfolio and how you plan to protect the technology that you have?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I'll let Mark add on to this. But as Mark had mentioned, one of the things that is really unique about this space is actually the ductus arteriosus is a vessel that is a conduit between two great vessels. So it sits between the aorta and the pulmonary vessel, the pulmonary arteries, and no other vessel or conduit is like this, right? So most stents are traditionally designed for branching vessels, and this is not a branch vessel. So a lot of our IP has to do with the fact that, it's this very unique anatomy. But, to your point, I would say, the stent space is very crowded, but a lot of, stent design is also pretty much off patent. So Mark, if you wanted to add.
Yeah, and there are some differences between what we're trying to do and what most stents are also trying to do, where we're not trying to push aside atherosclerotic plaque, which gives us some advantages in terms of, designing more flexible stents or stents that have additional features for this particular anatomy. And so some of that adjustability and anchoring sort of in a ductus between these two gray vessels, we think are some of the key features that we intend to patent. We've already filed a couple of provisional patents and plan to convert those to utility patents by the end of the year.
And I'm guessing from a capital standpoint, it's gonna require some pretty significant dollars just from doing clinical studies and doing other things. So any other information about your capital plans and how do you plan to pay for some of these clinical studies, which can take time, money, resources.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great question, and thanks for that. And this is obviously something that we've thought about a lot, and this is something where, obviously we could actually use some of the MedTech Innovator support and accelerator partnerships to make sure that we truly understand. But as Mark had mentioned, our plan is really to go after the HDE pathway. So HDE is humanitarian device exemption, meaning that you have to prove safety and probable benefit, not safety and efficacy. The number of patients is so small in this space that our guess is that we would only have to run a very small clinical trial. And in terms of capital required, obviously smaller clinical trials will require less capital, but our hope is that we will also be supported in part by SBIR grants, which do have in their phase 3 funding money for clinical trials up to $1 million a year.
Hi there, great presentation. How far will that $10 million take you, the Series A that you—
Yeah, so that's a great question. Thanks for that, Rosemary. So we are planning basically for that Series A to take us all the way through the launch of the first product, including getting commercial traction. So we know that we can't just get to the finish line and then pass out, right? So we need to get through a good number of, get through clinical commercial traction there. And we are a portfolio company, which is what makes us a little bit different as a pediatric company. And we realized very early on that had to be part of our business strategy. There's no one pediatric congenital heart disease market that was large enough to support an entire company. And so we're using basically some of that Series A financing to also support the development of our next 2 devices.
This is Susan.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to—
Okay.
Sorry, Rosemary.
No, I just wanted to ask what the pre-money valuation was on that 10 million.
We don't have a pre-money. Obviously, we're still looking, we're looking for a lead investor who would propose terms.
Okay.
So my question's a little bit different, but it tees off of that. What other uses might there be for this particular stent technology?
That's a great question. I would say we are an unabashedly pediatric company here. We're not trying to look for adult applications. This stent is designed in a very Stanford Biodesign innovation way, which is that we tried to really, truly understand the needs of a ductus arteriosus stent and design a specific stent for the ductus arteriosus, which is a very unique anatomy and physiology. So I can't say that we've really looked into potential other applications here, but I would to back that up, I would say that, a small flexible stent can be used in many different places.
So that was one of the questions, and the other is to think about the process as something that's fungible for other things as well. Because there are lots of different places that need stenting, lots of different kinds of locations in the body, and you've developed something that is unique. And I would expect that the process might lend itself to a lot of the other challenges for stenting. Just keep that in mind.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Licensing is a good thing.
And Beverly, this is Eric Chen from Abbott. I was just curious, what was what metal are you using for your stent?
It's a nitinol stent, so self-expanding. Yep.
Okay.
And that's what allows us to get through a microcatheter, right? So one of the challenges that Mark had described is that all of these coronary stents are very large and they're very stiff in their delivery system. So many times these physicians cannot navigate these tortuous ductus arterioses, and they have to do a lot of kind of straightening, and then there's ductal spasm that can happen. And when there's ductal spasm, that's obviously a life-risking type of thing because this is the only conduit that's supplying blood. But they can get a microcatheter through anywhere, right? So the fact that it's a self-expanding stent, it's delivered through a microcatheter, those are the main benefits of the technology.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question about your product is the stent. What about the delivery catheters? Doesn't sound like you're doing any innovation on that side. And if I'm incorrect, let me know.
Yeah, that's a great question.
And then I have
thanks, Dr.
a second question too, but maybe start with the first one.
Yeah, sure. So yes, the delivery system is absolutely part of the innovation. So a specially designed microcatheter that navigates the tortuosity of the ductus arteriosus is part of the whole package. So the idea here is that you would gain access with your regular wire, and then you would just take the microcatheter up. It should be able to navigate the ductus very easily, and then you would deliver that stent directly through the microcatheter system.
And second question is, the regulatory affairs consultants that you're using feel that you'll be successful with this humanitarian device exemption because, one of the requirements there is that there's no comparable device. Now, the question is, what's a comparable device? But I mean, obviously, people are doing it now with the devices that are already available.
Yeah, so that is an excellent point, and really thank you for that insight. We are doing, we've become relatively confident that we can do this. We've talked to, obviously, Valzam Paris at FDA about this approach. We do think that the HD pathway is possible, but we're doing a lot more legwork. I would say we're pretty much, we're still at the beginning of this journey, and we still need to do a lot of research to ensure all of that. And like Mark said, our plan is to have our first Q-sub, I should say, by the end of this year.
Yeah, and to add, there are no stents approved for this indication of use. So we'd be the first ones for this.
Right, that I know. That I believe is true. Thanks.
And I think lastly, Beverly, sorry about that.
I was going to say, Eric, last question to you.
Yeah, well, it's not a question, but it's more of a comment, Paul, so thanks for that. But I think, Beverly, as you know, the HD program for pediatrics allows the manufacturer to make profit. So that's probably also another thing to consider, which I'm sure you have already.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thanks.
Thanks for that point, Eric. All right. So that was a great presentation, Starlight. Thank you, Mark and Bev. Okay, we're going to move on to what will be our last presentation. This is going to be Weinberg Medical Physics. We just had a schedule change. So Weinberg Medical Physics, Irv Weinberg, if you're ready, Irving. I'd like to see the presentation and maybe you can explain to us where you came up with that name.
Okay, now for something completely different. So this is a non-invasive diagnostic and therapeutic device and is aimed at cardiac conduction anomalies. See if I can advance the slide. Okay, boomer. Okay, so you guys know better than me about the challenges of fixing conduction anomalies, especially in little kids. These include prior surgery. You require an X-ray dose. I know people take it for granted, but it's something you'd like to minimize both to the patients and the practitioners. And there are some complications, as we've discussed, and the procedures are not always successful. The market, it's not a huge market, but we do expect that we will eventually be able to use a similar product for adults, which is a huge market. And as you know, there are only a few devices that have been approved by FDA for pediatric use. This particular product is actually very suitable for pediatric and even better for infants. So the standard of care is currently cryoablation or cryomapping. And the spatial resolution depends on the flow because you're relying on heat. And so if there's a lot of flow, that's going to change the effect that you get. And there are other products as well. But these generally rely on sticking something into the patient. And so in order to stick something in the patient, first you have to get it into the patient, you have to get it to the location that you want, and then you have to move it along, and you're only going to be doing one place at a time. Okay, so here's a solution. I'm going to spend more time on this. So what we have is an integrated cardiac MRI. It'll also give you a magnetocardiogram. And so do you see my little arrow there? Do you see my cursor? So this is the MRI, and it looks like a hedgehog. And unlike a conventional MRI, which has a superconducting ring, and then there are gradient coils, and then there are RF coils, everything is modular. We have a modular MRI. The advantage of that from a manufacturing point of view is that we can make different modules very easily. And as I will show you, we have an approved system, was just approved last month for the prostate. And we're also building a system for the brain. And this one is for the heart, and especially for pediatric heart. So there are many modules here. Each module gives you a magnetic field. And so we don't need a static field. We don't need a superconducting system. Each module gives you a magnetic field, which acts both as a static field as well as a gradient field. And I'll show you in the next slide that this was kind of a feature, is that we have to, if we want to avoid bioeffects, we have to fire these magnets very, very quickly. But if you want to create bioeffects, you can tune that. And that's something that we only realized in the last 6 months. So, so here is what happens if you were to tune, if you're going to fire these modules in a specific sequence. What you're seeing around the heart, this is kind of showing in the myocardium, is that we can induce electrical fields and thereby electrical currents in various locations in the heart, in various circuits in the heart, at one or more locations, and non-invasively and registered on the MR image. Okay, so now I've kind of explained this a little bit, and so I'm just going to go through the features. Is we tomographically induce cardiac currents. The therapeutic resolution we're getting is comparable currently to the catheter-based ablation methods. We can program cardiac circuits or specific locations. We can induce temporary mapping or permanent, or a temporary block for mapping or permanent block for therapy, again, in the same sitting, just by changing the magnetic field, which induces an electric field. So there's no catheterization involved, no ionizing radiation involved. I understand that may stretch people's heads a little bit, but that's kind of the vision. Okay, so here's what I was saying. I should have presented first. So conventional MRI systems avoid this region. This is gradient speed because they get bioeffects. We previously, for other systems, have been in this region, so we avoid bioeffects. But what we realized is that some people might actually like to get bioeffects. So we're dancing back into this region. And because we're doing this tomographically, we can excite different parts of the heart. Okay, move on. So the advantages are you're going to get real-time 3D images, which you don't have with one of these two projection systems that you'd have in a cath lab. It's going to be puncture-free. Now, if you want to do a puncture and you want to put your catheter up there, that's fine. It's going to be radiation-free, and the resolution is going to be independent of the flow because we're doing this with electric fields as opposed to heat. So a regulatory path, we want to do a preclinical study, then we want to do a single-arm trial, and then approval under humanitarian device exemption or breakthrough. So just to show you that we're not totally crazy here, this is a system that was just approved by FDA. This is for prostate image-guided biopsy of the prostate. This is a single-sided MRI. It's the only single-sided MRI that's been ever approved by the FDA. And that hole there is not to put the patient in. That hole there is to put instruments through. So the patient is lying right next to this. So our system is different for this particular purpose because we're not trying to do image-guided biopsy of the prostate. We're trying to do cardiac imaging as well as therapy. So in terms of the value proposition, we want to replace a lot of the X-ray based systems with our therapy-enabled MRI. There are some reimbursements available already, and we'll start with pediatric hospitals, then we'll move on to cardioversion and other adult indications. And the price per system is going to be comparable to digital catheter lab equipment. What I didn't tell you was that these modules are actually very inexpensive. Each module is about $200, and we'll use about 50 of them. So it's pretty easy for us to build. We have a lot of patents. We have 31 patents issued in multiple locations, including China, and we have a lot of patents pending. What we are is, Weinberg Medical Physics is an incubator, and what we do is we license technology to either spin-outs or strategic partners for specific fields of use. So for example, for urology, we licensed that out to a company called Permaxo, which now has a $200 million valuation. So here's kind of what we are. So we have different companies for different fields of use. We have a pet imaging company. We have a horse imaging company that's currently, we have one of the systems at Santa Anita Racetrack. We have the prostate company, which is the star of our group. Neuroparticle is focusing on the brain, and we have a group doing breast imaging. So we have experience on getting products into the market. We've gotten FDA approval for 5 devices that have been used by millions of Americans. We've sold patents, and we've worked with large strategic partners, including Philips and Microport. Microport is the largest MedTech company in China, and we have enough people to get the job done. So here's kind of a Gantt chart of what we expect total to FDA approval, about $5 million. And we want to leverage that with federal funding for R&D and human trials. We've gotten about $15 million over the last 5 years through various federal grants, and a similar amount through private investors for our various companies. So in summary, we have a new kind of MRI with therapeutic capability, no ionizing radiation, no need for vascular access. And we're going to initially apply this to pediatrics because it's just easier for us to apply a magnetic field to a smaller region that's closer to us. So it's actually easier for us to do pediatrics than for adults. And we're going to leverage federal funding and strategic partnerships. And we've got a lot of experience in getting imaging products and products for image-guided therapy through the FDA and into the marketplace. Thanks.
Thank you, Irving. And we know Permaxo well, and very impressive company. So great to see more coming out of your incubator. So judges, if you want to go ahead and ask some questions.
Sure, I have one. This is James Love from Mobiline, a patent attorney. You know, there's 100 patents here. How many of those actually would cover this product compared to some of the other products that you had?
Yeah, so it's about 30 patents that have been issued, and there's at least 100 that are pending. And I'd say about 90% of them relate to this. So this technology is not something that just started yesterday. We've invested about 10 years and about $20 million in coming up with an MRI that can be created out of Lego block. So I'd be happy to talk to you about it. It uses electropermanent magnets. And the advantage of that is that unlike a resistive MRI, which would require a lot of power, we just have to apply power for about 10 microseconds, and the magnet holds on to it. So that's the reason that I didn't talk about that, but this thing just operates off of the wall. It doesn't require a chill system or a special power system as would be required for a regular MRI. 5 years ago, people would say that's just crazy, but Hyperfine has done it, Permaxo has done it. We're using pulse power technology, which is different than both. Those guys used permanent magnets. We're using electropermanent magnets. So there's a lot of stuff that's novel.
Great, thank you.
Showa. All right, it's too different for you guys.
Libby Sherwin, I'm going to ask a question. I've been embarrassed to ask it, but this might be more complex than my simple brain is familiar with. So can you just kind of take a step back and say clinically, a few of the diagnostic capabilities, and then what are the therapeutic capabilities? Do you mind just giving me the clinical overview again of what this does?
Yeah. So on the clinical side, it's an MRI. People know about MRIs. The advantage is it's fast. So we can get an image in about a few seconds. again, because it's a pulse power MRI, I'd be happy to talk about that at length. On the therapeutic side, what we have is the ability to induce voltages in tissue. That's pretty much the broad basis of it. And because it's tomographic, we can induce these voltages in specific locations of tissue, in one location or in multiple locations. So why would you want to induce voltages in tissue? Well, that's kind of what conduction is all about. And so if you want to see where are the currents, can we induce currents? Can we overcurrent a certain area in order to stun it or to ablate it? Yeah, we could do that. I haven't demonstrated that yet in animals because there's some work involved. And in general, up to now, we've tried to avoid that because the FDA doesn't like you to get bioeffects. But we're turning a problem into a feature in the ability to induce voltages. In terms of where will this be useful? I just think that if you have a non-invasive method of mapping and stunning and ablating tissue at multiple locations in the heart, I think it's going to have a lot of applications. But I'm not a cardiac surgeon. I'm a radiologist, and so I'm going to be relying on experts, and that's the main reason I'm at this event, is to meet with the people who really know the applications better than I do.
Thank you.
I mean, this is a question and a comment. That's really just related to Dr. Sherwin's question is what if the primary, Johnson & Johnson, for example, you probably know is the leader in the AFib ablation marketplace, okay? And that space has been growing double digits for 10 years in a row. I think our business grew 15% last year. That's public information. So it's a big interest to our cardiovascular device group. They use catheters, of course, and that's what everybody else is using. The question to me, this would be really transformational if you can show that you can ablate the pulmonary veins for atrial fibrillation non-invasively using MRI. Is that where you're heading? Because, just kind of alluding to it saying, we can change voltages, but you haven't demonstrated it yet without a plan to get there is not going to get the leaders, Medtronic, J&J in that space, particularly excited.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the reason I'm here is to talk to people like you. In terms of experimental data, we've done a human study, and I've published it. I showed you a picture from it, and that was about avoiding bioeffects. But we showed where you would get bioeffects and where you wouldn't get bioeffects. So I apologize if I'm being a little humble here, but we've already done the human studies. In terms of atrial fibrillation, this is a target we'd be very happy to do, and it's a new platform, we're happy to talk with you guys. Our job is to build the systems and license the technology to folks in specific fields of use. We've already done that for urology. We've done it with, these guys are big companies. Philips is a big company. Microport is a big company. We're now, our Permaxo is now, I've been to Microport, and they're now considered to be a section of, Permaxo is now considered to be a section of Microport. So we're used to working with large companies. So I'm happy to work with you on this specific problem, atrial fibrillation or other ones.
All right, one more question.
All right, cool.
All right, very good. Thank you for that presentation. It wasn't too different, don't worry. All right, so that was our last presentation. Big round of applause here for all the presentations. Great job, everyone. I thought those were terrific. And now, in general, as I've said before, the way this works is that you're going to get some feedback from us after the event. So you actually will get a document that has feedback that we've been collecting from some of our judges today. So you'll have a chance to look forward to that. And you'll hear from us right away. We're going to be choosing the companies for the accelerator and announcing those, I believe, tomorrow. So that is going to be coming up quickly. So you'll hear from us after our deliberation Our judges are going to stick around for another hour and talk about the different companies that presented and exchange some thoughts on that. So that's what we're going to be doing as judges for the next hour. But before we do that, I wanted to bring it back to Kalala. Kalala, what were your thoughts on today, and anything else you want to share?
Thank you so much, Paul. I just wanted to add my thanks to all the judges and all the presenters. I really enjoyed all the 8 presentations, great quality and great solutions. Thank you all. And as Paul mentioned, by tomorrow, you'll know the companies that will be advanced to the accelerator program. Those companies will come back in September for the final presentation for a chance to win up to $50,000 per company, and we have $150,000 for the final presentation to give to companies. Thanks again. Thanks.
Thank you. And before we break to the judges, I also wanted to give a minute or two for our judges to make some comments. If you wanted to comment generally on the presentations you saw today, there's a bunch of different types of technologies. So if any of our judges just want to unmute yourselves and make any comments for the presenting companies, that would be great.
This is Ken. Just wanted to touch on a couple things. Great presentations overall. I think you saw a varied degree of passion from different people. I think the more energy you can put into it, the more you can personalize your story as to why you're doing it, the better off that you are. You've got to hook people right away. If you get too clinical, you can lose people. A lot of times the investors don't have the same level of clinical expertise that you do. They only have surface level clinical expertise or none at all. And so just, understand your audience. And I think a lot of you are on a great path. So I think great job by everybody today.
So this is Susan. I would add just that you should tell people what you're doing. Tell people where you're going. Tell people what the opportunity is, not just for this product, but for other products. Don't be afraid to speak about vision as well as focus for this product, because people who are listening want to understand that it's not just this, that you've developed either a new approach or a technology. Maybe you're not going to develop it, but it has the possibilities of being developed and used in other disease states and other patients. Those are good things for having something new. And it helps to hear that there's a future and not just a niche. So I think that's really important. And to take the credit that you've earned for the development and take, and as you've already heard, be excited about what you're doing. You don't have to be very calm, and be excited about what you're doing. It's contagious.
Part of the case you have to make, and all of you have done a great job, and thank you for those presentations, is to make sure you remember to be looking at the clinical data that proves improvement in net health outcomes. Safety, effectiveness, crucial for FDA, but not sufficient for reimbursement. Make sure you're getting enough money for your clinical trial so they capture a broader array of clinical data and maybe even health economics to make a compelling clinical as well as economic case. Good luck.
I had a few comments as well. I thought there were some very good animations today, some great videos. The more you can animate and illustrate how things work is very valuable. And I'm going to echo something that I think if we've heard a couple more times already, but a lot of the investors, for example, in my network are family offices, and John Parker's on the line, and he's going to understand everything that's said, but some of the family offices will not understand the clinical, the very deep technical clinical knowledge. You lost them at the first slide, sadly. So just try to outline the problem you're solving, and then what currently is done to solve that problem, and then what your solution is. Also on your teams, I looked at the teams that were presented, and a lot of them were just had very strong medical and scientific expertise, but I would encourage you to diversify the team with industry expertise as well. In addition, to try to outline the stage that you're in at the beginning of when you start to say, here's the solution, what stage are you in? How much money have you raised, and where are you? Be preclinical, you're through FDA approval. I was surprised sometimes when I heard there's FDA approval, but towards the end of the presentation. Also, I'm just going to reiterate that the roadmap, a roadmap of both your product roadmap as well as your financial roadmap. And the financials are very important. We only saw those in a few, and as well as the business model. But otherwise, they were great presentations.
Good. Thank you very much for that, Rosemary. All right. So great.
Oh, I have one more thing. Sorry. It would be really helpful for you to put page numbers on your slides. Put page numbers on your slides, please. I always want to refer to page numbers and not want to make someone go back through their deck.
That's good. Yeah, I saw at least one of those that had page numbers in the corner. So good point. All right. If there's no other comments from our judges, we're going to do a group photo, which is very important. We want to make sure we've got something we can share on social media. So I believe Olivia is here as well from our team. Is that right, Olivia? Yes, you are. So I did not introduce Olivia before, who is on the marketing side here at MedTech Innovator. So Olivia is going to take a group photo. And if everyone wants to, make sure you have your camera on and wave at the screen.
Okay, I'll start taking it now. Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So again, I'll just echo everything I've heard. Great feedback from some of the judges on ways to make these presentations stronger. That passion and enthusiasm does come through, and make sure you embrace that, because you're curing diseases, you're helping patients, you're saving lives, you're doing amazing things, and we want to feel that. It did in some cases, and others could be stronger. So that's a really great thing for you to take away from today. But great job. You'll be hearing from us soon. And so startups, you guys can drop off, and judges, why don't you guys stick around? We'll be back in take a 5-minute break, and then we will go ahead and start our deliberation. So 5 minutes, judges, you can take a stretch, take a quick break, grab some food if you need a snack, and then we're going to get back here. I'm going to send all of your notes and comments around by email. So if you haven't submitted your scores or comments, now would be a good time to do that, or sometime in the next 5 minutes. In 5 minutes, I'm going to send out an email with any of the ones that I've received so far. That way you'll have them in front of you when we're doing our discussion. If you're not able to do that in time, don't worry about it. Don't stress. It's just so we can have some things to look at on the screen while we start talking about the companies. But we'll see you guys back here in 5 minutes.